bad.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Vance, also known as Ricky Verandas, and a great conversation for you today. A nice long podcast. I've been doing a lot of these long ones of late, and I think you guys have really been enjoying it. But a dear friend, Charlie Robson, the host of Macroaggressions podcast, the author of The Octopus of Global Control, and by the time you hear this, his new book will probably be out, The Controlled Demolition of the American Empire. What a great title for a book. So we talk about the book eventually, but Charlie and I are so comfortable chatting, and we've gotten so close throughout the years of podcasting and doing shows together and chit-chatting that we kind of talk about everything and anything. But if you hold on more at the end of the show, or maybe halfway through the show, we get more into current events and his book and all that type of stuff. And also, if you want to support the show, I have a Patreon page. Just go to my YouTube channel, as long as it still exists, RV36, or just search Ripple Effect Podcast. And in the show description, I'll have links to all my social media accounts: Twitter, RV36, Instagram, RV36, PARLER, RV36. The Ripple Effect Podcast has a Facebook page. You can like me there. I also have a website, rippleeffectpodcast.com, which if by any chance I disappear on any of the platforms, just go to that website and you'll have links to whatever social media accounts I'm still available on, and you can listen to the show there. I also have a personal Facebook page. If you want to connect with me, please do. Just let me know that you're not a robot or whatnot, and I'll have no problem connecting with you. Just sometimes I get random friend requests, and I don't know who they are, so I keep you hanging. And thanks so much for everybody who has connected with me. All the great Patreon supporters the last couple months. It's so awesome. I mean, I don't take this for granted, you guys going in your pockets and supporting the show. I know times are tough and the future's uncertain, so like I said, I really, really appreciate anybody who is finding a little bit of money to help support the show or buy merch or any of that stuff. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I'm trying to let people know, if you get some value out of the show, then just attempt to give some type of value back. And the most important thing is spreading these shows. If you can't support the show financially, please just share the show, tweet the show, review the show, tell people about the show, which I know many of you guys have. I know the Mickey Willis episode 271 episode has gotten amazing feedback. It was almost a 3-hour conversation, and so many people hit me up saying it was like a top 3 podcast. That really meant a lot to me, and I'm glad that people really like that podcast. Unfortunately, one of my best podcasts has been one of the only ones that have been suppressed on iTunes and having issues with people getting a hold of it. So please, if you don't find it, if you don't see episode 271 with Mickey Willis, the pandemic documentary filmmaker, please go on Spotify or a different app and look for it. It was an amazing conversation. I hate asking for money, and I know times are tough. So please just go out and support the show by telling people about it, review it. Same thing with my guest, Charlie Robson. Review his show, tweet his show, tell people about his show, buy his book. They're not expensive, and they're great books to give to people who are very new to these type of topics and subjects. And that little bit goes a long way. I mean, there's millions of people out there who listen to alternative media. Millions and millions of people. Millions and millions of people who feel the same way that we feel. Millions and millions of people who listen to these conversations and get something out of it. If we all contribute a little bit, then there'd be more of us. There'd be more content, and we would have more resources to be able to spread this further, and we would have more reach. Think about it as a value for value system, where if you get value out of this, try to give some value in return. And sometimes that value can be just your time in telling people about it, reviewing it, sharing it, liking it, subscribing to it. So that alone goes a long way. Another Union of the Unwanted around the corner the day before the election, November 2nd. If you guys are new to that, you don't know what it is. The Union of the Unwanted is a kind of like a huge Zoom conference call that I, Charlie Robson, who's my guest today, Sam Tripley, and Midnight Mike all kind of contributed. And we get a bunch of people from alternative media, researchers, journalists, all these people together. And we just get a bunch of interesting people hoping to spark interesting conversations. So it's been really fun. The listeners have really enjoyed it. The participants have really enjoyed it. And I think it's been a success, and hopefully it keeps on growing. That's it, guys. And I'll see you on the next one. You had me too, because I'm like, now I'm really confused. You got snow, Charlie? Where the hell do you live?
I'm in Denver.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Kansas City Chiefs game yesterday was in Denver. They were playing in the snow. Yeah, we got snow yesterday and today, man. It's just I hate snow.
Yeah.
I'm from Southern California, where we don't get snow. And I've been living here for 5 years, freezing my dick off every single day. I swear to you.
Well, I think there's something about like the heat and the night, like sun. I don't know. It just gives you energy. You feel better. Little, joint pains and stuff kind of go away. It just, I don't know what it is about the winter. It definitely makes tougher people because dealing with it. And there is something peaceful about like, I like driving on like a snowy day, like, nobody's on the roads and it's just quiet and peaceful. But it, yeah, I mean, that gets old really quick. And then after a while, you're just like, okay, this sucks. The snow looks like shit because it's all dirty and brown and people are getting into accidents because they don't know how to drive in the snow, and everything hurts. And I'm sick of shoveling, and it just, yeah. I mean, I
got that. I got all that.
Is this your first snowstorm of the season?
No, we had one the middle of September, which was the earliest it had ever snowed. And it was like a legit snowstorm, like a foot of snow. And then yesterday we obviously knew it was coming, but yesterday it snowed all day. And today my daughter's school is canceled. So we're all home, just chilling.
Yeah, like my wife loves snowing days. She she can cook. We just hang out. We we watch movies or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I love being outside. The heat doesn't bother me. Like we go down to Florida, like we made it like a little tradition because my wife has family in Boca, so we'd go down there and visit her, and it'd be a really cheap little vacation because they'd give us a place to stay. Her cousin would even get us like booster seats for the kids, and make one of their kids give up a car for the weekend, for the long weekend. So we'd have everything, and they'd always be cooking for us or whatever. So we started going down there, and we'd go down there on the week of the 4th of July, and people are like, dude, it's so hot. I'm like, I don't mind it. I really don't. I like sweating. Being somebody who's always been into sports, I enjoy sweating and getting that, workout or whatever. So I know some people are like, my wife will complain when we go to the gym. Well, when we used to go to the gym together, that never lasts long. She goes in waves, but she, with the kids, it's almost impossible now. But she's always like, oh, I'm all sweaty. This is disgusting. I'm like, babe, that's what we're doing at the gym. We're here to sweat. Yeah. You should be excited because it means it's working and you're doing something, So it is funny, the different mentality or whatever, where like when you're used to playing sports, it's like you don't even think about it. I remember just like dripping sweat, and I just used to love the feeling of like I felt like I was detoxing, and you just felt better. Your pores were open. Yeah. You just felt like you sweated out a bunch of bad stuff that should be out. So
that's I play golf, and I grew up in Palm Springs, which is the hottest place in the world. I mean, short of Death Valley, it's like it's there. And I played golf at this place that was $200 a round to play, but I got on it for $7. And the guy who was cleaning my clubs at the end, and was like, "How much did you pay?" I said, I paid $11. And he said, "You got ripped off." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "You got to go on this other site, and then you do it. And it on there, you can play for $2, and I was like $2, and so I went home and I looked it up, and sure enough, he was right. On Golf Now, you could play at that course for $2 plus the $5 service charge fee. So it worked out to $7 to play this $200 course, but it was in August, and so I would play it all the time. I played it one day. It was 117, and I played it. I was the only person out there. The guy before I went out there, he's like, "Don't die because we won't find you for a couple of weeks." And I was like, "I'm gonna be fine. I got all the water in the world." And it was just me and, like, no exaggeration, like 1,000 road runners everywhere. There were so many road runners. There were at least 50 road runners on each hole. And you're like, all right, I'm just gonna hit it. And if I hit one of you fuckers, then you should have gotten out of the way. You know what I mean? And it was just me and 1,000 road runners out there. And so it was so hot, but it doesn't bother me. But this cold bullshit, yeah, this bothers me. I took a screenshot of I took a picture of the temperature gauge of my car like a year, well, it must have been 2 years ago. I was driving my daughter to school. It was -10. And I was like, this is insane, man. I can't.
Living in Massachusetts.
And I sold a guy a condo when I was living in Las Vegas. It was like February, and it was 65 degrees. I was in my office. I was all bundled up because I was cold. It just felt colder than 65. And this guy I'd sold a condo to came walking in the sales center. He's a Canadian guy from Calgary. He's walking in shorts. I go, "Oh yeah, of course you've got shorts on. You know, you're out here running around like it's summer." He goes, "I just got off the plane last night. I came in from Calgary." And he says, "It is 100 degrees warmer here than it is in Calgary." He said it was 35 below when I left. It's 65 here. I was like, "Okay,
Wow.
well, that's why you're wearing shorts." He's like, "Yeah, man, it's summer to me." And I was like, "Okay, I get it."
Well, it's amazing how your body adapts, right? Because it's in the winter when you're used to the really cold weather. Once it hits like 40 or 50, you're like, "Oh, it's a nice day. It's like it's warm out," you know. But then, like, right now, it's like 50 today. I don't know. I think it's like in the 50s, and it feels cold because we've had somewhat decent weather till now. And so it's just like, yeah. And I'm like, in the winter, I'm like, after a couple months of this shit, I'm like, 50 will feel warm, you know. So it's amazing. That sucks. Yeah, that's why Denver? Is it work?
My wife's family's from
your
here.
wife's family. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's always the wife. Anytime I meet somebody who's from somewhere weird, and I'm like, "What the fuck are you guys doing in Massachusetts or like this neck of the woods, Springfield or whatever?" And they're like, "I'm like, let me guess, a girl?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "It's always a girl."
I have a couple friends that are from Springfield, actually, that grew up. They all moved to California. I mean, I knew them in California, but they were all. Tell you, man, I like the Boston people a lot. I like the Springfield area. All of my friends that were from there, and there were a bunch of them. First of all, they all left the Northeast. They said, "Fuck that. I don't want snow," and none of that stuff. They came to Southern California, and they all had the same sense of humor that was a really good one, a real, like, Northeast Boston fuck with you. They'd give you a hard time, but they'd have a big smile on their face, and it always came from, like, a fun place. I just loved all those. All the Boston people were always the funniest, and this was back before the Patriots were winning Super Bowls, so they were always like the funniest and the most like, "Oh, our fucking team, they suck." You know, I mean, they were just
for a long time.
They sucked for a long, long time, and I remember watching that Tuck game with Brady against the Raiders in the snow in 2001. And I was like, as soon as when they won that game, I remember saying to my friend from Boston, I was like, I think maybe the tide has turned with you guys. He goes, "You don't understand Boston, man. It's just a setup for us to lose the big one. You don't understand." And I was like, well, maybe.
Yeah.
So they were pessimistic about their sports teams as usual.
Yeah, it's not we're very passionate about our sports teams here, and I think a lot of it is because of the winters and the very blue collar families and people who live here. Like, they appreciate, like, guys who work hard. They don't. We have, like, no time for prima donnas. Like, it's just like,
no.
You know, Tom Brady was acceptable because even though he kind of was a prima donna because his wife's a model and he's a good looking dude and he's doing all these commercials, and he got caught in Uggs. Remember that video?
Right.
but he worked hard. You know what I mean? Like it was
Yeah.
like it was off the field. On the field, he related to the blue collar guys because he didn't have all the physical gifts, but he worked harder
Yeah.
than everybody else, and we could relate to that. And a lot of
Yeah.
us in the East Coast that are like right off the boat immigrants, like a lot of my friends are like literally like either they were born in another country or definitely their parents were. So I know a lot of like right off the boat immigrants, not a whole lot of Americans that are like already like second, third generation back. You know, my wife is actually the most American person I hang out with on a regular basis because it wasn't, I think it was her great grandfather who was born in Italy, but she's she's pretty Americanized. And but a lot of these foreigners that come to America, like a lot of them come from like farming background, small villages,
Mhm.
so they appreciate the hard work. They appreciate that type of thing. The Italians, the Irish, and the East Coast humor. There's definitely a lot of that. You know, I mean, there's pros and cons to it because there's I sometimes I say that people will use, oh, I'm just being honest as a way of being a dick, like the same
Mhm.
way that somebody will use like, oh, it's East Coast humor, for a excuse of being a dick. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm just busting your balls. So I mean there is a little bit of that, but I think overall I wouldn't trade it in because the alternative is everybody being way too sensitive. So I'll
Oh
take a
yeah.
little bit of dickness for well, that's wrong way of using that word.
Yeah.
A little bit of people
But
using being a jerk at times for the fact that people do have thicker skin hair, they do bust balls, they do, people, when I hang out with my friends, we do a lot of that. We're always busting each other's chops, and from the
Mhm.
outside looking in, if you're not from the area, you'll think like either we hate each other or we're jerks, but we get a kick out of it and we all laugh. If it's a good joke, like you'll even laugh at
Yeah.
the joke even if it's directed at you.
For sure. That was the difference. The New York guys would bust your balls. It would be mean and intended to be mean. The Boston guys would bust your balls, and it was so funny. Even if it was directed at you, you had no choice but to
Yeah,
laugh at it because it
exactly.
was because they were way more clever, and it always kind of felt sort of right too. Like, oh, you are kind of. I met Tom Brady, by the way. I met him
Wow.
right after he won that first Super Bowl. I got to tell you a funny story actually about him. We were we went to, you would have loved this because I was tripping out. Like the most star-studded, coolest event I'd ever been to was the ESPYS post party in LA. In so it was 2002, and they had just no, it was 2000. He just won his first Super Bowl. So that happened in January 2002. And this was, I think, like April of 2002. And we got invited to, we were doing sports media training for pro athletes. We had all these connections. We had just been with the IMG hockey agents that are based in Santa Monica, and they said, "Hey, listen, we've got extra tickets. Do you want to go to this thing tonight?" And my business partner and I were like, "Hell yeah!" Now my business partner was an actor, and so I was bringing like the sports background to it. He had a sports background, but I was bringing the sports background and like the business component to this company. He was bringing the acting. He was teaching these guys how to be better on camera and interviews and things like that. But his background was in acting. And in fact, he was the leader of band camp in American Pie 2. So we're at the SB's post party, which is at the Mondrian Hotel Sky Bar, which is like it's just the outside part where there's a big pool at a hotel. And it is packed with like celebrities in the sports world and actors and everything too. And I'm just trying to keep my shit together because I'm like, oh my God, there's Joe Morgan, and oh my God, there's Kobe Jones, and there's all these guys, and so I'm standing with my partner Steve, and we run into the American Pie people. Now he knows them because he's done the movie with them. So it's me and Steve and Shannon Elizabeth and Tara Reid and Joe Reitman, who's married to Shannon Elizabeth, and Jason Biggs, and I forget who else. But anyway, somehow Tom Brady winds up in this conversation with us. So you know how you're in like a cocktail party where everyone's they're kind of like eight people and you're standing in a circle and you're all talking. So I wasn't really talking to him so much, but I was standing next to him. And all these, I'm just listening to the conversation. They're talking about how, when we were doing the movie and all this stuff. And I said, Tom Brady starts chatting with Tara Reid. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And my partner Steve had been like, Tara Reid was fucking hammered the whole time we were filming the movie. We would hide from her because it'd be like, guys, what are we doing? Like we were all in hotels, in the hotel, and she'd call everybody's room to try and find, like, where are we going tonight? And they'd ditch her because she was just a disaster. So we're at this party and she's there and she's fucked up already. And she starts chatting with Tom Brady and everything. And I'm just, I'm not involved in this. And I just watched the two of them just go walk off together and leave. Dude, I think she just landed Tom Brady, and everyone's like, "Fuck."
That is wild.
And I had this moment during that event where, like, I was kind of sitting down and I was watching all these people walk by, and all these celebrities. And Joe Morgan walks by, who was the Hall of Fame second baseman for the Cincinnati Reds. I was, and he was calling ESPN baseball games for years after that. He just died actually like a week ago, which is sad. But he walked by, and I was like watching him walk by me, and then I'm looking at who's sitting on the other side of this kind of walkway, and I look, and it's Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey, and Nick Lachey is doing the same thing I'm doing, which is we're both watching him like this. Like in awe, and he walks by, and then we lock eyes with each other. I was like, Joe fucking Morgan. He's like, I know, and we're both like tripping out. It was just like that the whole night, like everything Hollywood about it. You walk out there, paparazzi flashes and everything. I was like, oh, this is fucking I lived in LA forever, never experienced anything like that until that one event. And it was like every athlete you could have ever wanted to see was all there at the same place. And I was legitimately freaking out and trying as hard as I could to not look like a douchebag who's like, hey, I'm totally impressed by all these famous people. But I was totally impressed by all the famous people because they were all pro athlete guys, not like, like Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson were sitting over there. I didn't really care too much. But when Joe Morgan walked by, we both were like, Joe fucking Morgan,
Yeah, it's appreciating just, the greatness, their ability to do something. Like I've always admired professional athletes. I mean, I understand a game, and there is this thing where it's just like internally I have this dilemma where it's like, I know it's just sports. It doesn't mean jack shit. Nothing changes. It doesn't change the world. It's just a fucking game. But I appreciate the fact that, like, okay, these guys are amazing athletes. And as somebody who's, I've been working out since I was a kid, always dibble-dabbled in different sports, mostly basketball and soccer. But I appreciate athleticism, skill. And it's just one of those things when I see somebody do something that I know that never, ever could I do, it just blows your fucking mind. I have a buddy of mine, and sometimes on the show, I'll just happen to be wearing one of his jerseys because I wore it to the gym or whatever. Still had it on, and who plays overseas, and he plays basketball overseas, and he's he's not in the NBA. He's a very good a professional player, but he didn't get recruited. He got good late in life, and how it is with professional sports. It's like the guys who really get all the attention they're getting recruited in middle school, early high school, or whatever. But I remember playing one-on-one. I remember going to games with him. He played, we played on some of the same teams. We would, in like local leagues or whatever, we played on the same team. And it just like, he was just at a different level. Like there's levels. Like I'm a good athlete. I'll go play pickup ball. I played pickup ball this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and I play soccer Sunday nights. And, I'm a good athlete. I can keep up with just about, anybody. And then you meet somebody that you're just like, holy shit, he's not the same type of creature. Like they're just like so much faster, and like everything they do just looks so easy, and you're just like, why? Like they shoot the ball and it's like everything looks effortlessly, and like everything looks like just like it makes you think you could do it. You're just like, he can dunk the ball that easy. Like, oh, maybe I could do it. Maybe I'm just not pushing hard enough. And then you're just like, it's just crazy. So like, I think sometimes you see these guys on TV, and because they're playing against equal talent, we forget how much better they are than the average person.
Yeah.
You know, it's mind blowing.
Yeah, I'm trying to explain to my wife that when you watch an NFL game, every one of those guys that's playing, and all those guys that are on the sidelines that aren't playing, the backup, the second string and third string, every single one of those guys was the best football player that ever went through their high school. All of them were. And you don't get to that level accidentally. I mean, we like doing the sports media company, we were around them. I mean, we were around those guys. We had our list of clients is pretty impressive. Our list of number one overall picks that we have as clients, we got a dozen of them. So we were interacting with these guys that were, you know, not just pro players, but they were the number one pick in their draft. And that is like a level that is unsustainable. Like I remember texting, or no, actually, I think was I texting or no, I must have been calling him because it was kind of before I was into tech. It was 2005. My business partner is in, he said, I'm in Alex Smith's hotel room in Times Square the night before the draft. I said, how very Jerry Maguire of you, you know? and I said, so, you guys sitting around with your acoustic guitar singing Kush Lash and all that stuff with stacks of shoes? He goes, we're not doing the guitar part, but the stacks of shoes are definitely here. You know, he's like, we got everything, like all this stuff has been shipped in. And it's like, so you get this, you know, it's just an unrealistic version of reality when you're that good. And, you know, to have everybody, you know, cater to you, it skews your version of like what's normal too. And then these guys get done playing, you know, their career ends, and it's just such a huge letdown. Forget the money part, just the fact that nobody's cheering for him anymore does things to them, you know. So a lot of them have a hard time post their professional career, which sucks, but.
Well, it gives them a purpose, you know, playing, they're wanted, they're loved.
Structure.
I mean, structure. So that guy, that author, I think he wrote Tribe with Sebastian Younger, I think was the author. Yeah. And he talked about like the Afghan military, or the U.S. military that was in Afghanistan, how they were like, they couldn't wait to get home, and they were in like one of the most dangerous parts of Afghanistan. And then when he reconnected with them, like, I don't know if it was 6 months or a year later or whatever, he's like, they're all depressed. And he's like, and I think this was some of the influence for his book, but it had to do with the fact that they didn't have purpose anymore. They went to a back home where they, you know, were working a unfulfilling job. Nobody really cared about them. They didn't feel like they had purpose. You know, they weren't around a community, or in that case, when you're in the military, you're with your little brotherhood of other people that are there on, you know, doing the same task, but you guys, you know, you have each other's back. So it creates this bond. And they miss that. And I think in sports, the same thing. You miss the bond. You miss the, you know, all these things. And, you know, it's funny because Jose Mourinho, who's a soccer coach, he currently coaches Tottenham, Portuguese soccer coach. You know, he coached Chelsea, Man U, or whatever. He talks about how he's like, oh, football isn't, and I'm talking about European football. Football isn't a sport. It's a religion. You know, it's a religion. And I think when he said that, you know, initially I thought like, okay, he means like people are fanatic and extreme like religion. But then you think about it, it's also in that aspect, it can be true, because people will do violent things and get too caught up into it and really be extremists in regards to sports. When you hear people beat somebody up because they were wearing, you know, the wrong team hat or whatever, that's ridiculous. But it's also religion in regards to the way I think that religion gives people peace. It gives them something to look forward to. It gives them, you know, some therapy, you know, in some sense. I think sports can do the same thing in regards to that. It can give people, you know, it does, when you're working an unfulfilling job and you're unhappy, it gives you something to look forward to when you get home. You know, as a fan, you know, it gives you a game to look forward to and get excited about. And then as a athlete, you also have a purpose. You have something, you have ups, you have downs. Yeah, I mean, the downs suck because, you know, you have the whole world critiquing every little mistake you made or whatever, and I'm sure that can be difficult. But you also have a lot of ups of like a whole city or a whole state loving you and telling you how great you are, and you bring happiness to all these people. I think there's some of that too. So it's you know, it is an interesting job. It's like, in a way, I respect them and don't respect them, because I'm like, wait, your job's really not that important. But to some people, it is important. To some people, it is maybe not life-changing, but I think it gives them something to look forward to, and not everybody not everybody is living a super happy, fulfilling life. So, if that game at the end of the night, or that, Sunday game, is something to look forward to and helps you get by, then fuck it. Yeah. Like, I guess it is important to some sense.
Important to me, as somebody that has been a sports, a player. I played soccer and I played soccer and baseball in high school, and soccer in college at USC, and I love the game. I love the team concept. I always thought it was weird. I always thought it was different for people that were tennis players and golfers that had such individual sports, that they didn't have that ball busting. And that, in fact, our first client was Pete Sampras, and Pete was very introverted and everything, but that's a strange dynamic when it's just like you as a young superstar who's maybe like 17, and the only person that you have a lot of interaction with is your coach. You guys go out on the road and everything, but you don't have that team environment where you're on the team bus with all the other players and everybody's busting each other's balls. Like, I like that. It's got to be different it was different, I should say, for the tennis and golf people, because they had such a different experience. It's so individual. You can't share the victory with anyone except maybe your coach. You can't share any of the blame it's all on you. You can't deflect any of that to anybody else. So you just have to deal with it. And it was lonely for a lot of them. They were out on the road, and it was just a weird environment. Whereas the basketball guys that we had, and the hockey guys that we had, and the football guys we had too, they were much more developed as human beings because of that interaction with other people. Whereas, like, I would go, like, our company was based at IMG Academies in Bradenton, Florida, and you would see just, you'd see guys that were top 20 ranked tennis players, guys and girls in the world. And you'd be like watching them play, and they would be so great. And then you would see them interacting when they were off the court, and they were a mess, or even on the court. I watched Xavier Malise, tennis player. I watched him destroy 7 rackets in 4 minutes, just smashing them and throwing them in trash cans. Just one after another and like, what is going on with this guy? And you're like, oh, well, he's got a lot of problems. Like, okay. But so it was, sometimes sports is really good for you and broadens you and gets you, helps you with social interaction. The overwhelming majority of people never advance to college, let alone pros and things like that. But there were some people, they needed more therapy than sports was going to provide them. They were sort of broken to begin with. So.
Yeah, you do learn stuff. You learn in regards to how, like you said, like it's people management, right? Like just like being a manager at a store or a restaurant, you're dealing with personalities. You're also some trauma that they might be dealing with also comes through. All these things have effect on how you play as a person, or as an athlete. It's like some of your personal perspectives and philosophies and traumas, everything that makes you human and makes you can come out when you play sports with them. Like, okay, are they a selfish player? Are they unselfish? Are they willing to put in the work? Are they willing to sacrifice their chance to score to give me the chance to score because I'm in a better position to do so? Like, all these things. So it's like you do learn a lot from people from playing with them. I hear a hissing in my freaking mic, and it's driving me crazy. But yeah, it's now it went away, so I scared it.
Just yell at it.
Yeah, just yelled at it apparently. Every once in a while, I can't figure out why. I don't know if it's static or something. Like this microphone, for some reason, I'll get a hiss, and there's no way of. I've unplugged everything and replugged everything in, and I can't resolve it. But I think it's just sometimes you have so many cords on top of one another that things just, I don't know. It picks up a signal from somewhere else or something else. So. Who knows? This is where I need Mike. Midnight Mike is my go-to tech guy. But do you still watch soccer or any sport in general that kind of really one that you follow more than others?
Oh, I watch every football game every week. I watch. I'll record as many of them as I can and watch them all.
All of them,
I'll,
even if it's not your team, like you.
all of them. Yeah.
Wow.
Baseball last night was Game 5 of the World Series. I watched that. Yeah, I watched it all. If I could switch places with anybody, it would be Joe Buck. I mean, talk about dream job, calling football, calling baseball. That's what I'd be doing for sure. Yeah, I'll watch all the football, and I remember saying like a long time ago, before we started the sports media company, saying that if I could create a job, or if I had a job where my role was to watch Sports Center every night, then I would consider it to be like a success. And then I remember when we started that company, actually my business partner started the company before, and then I came in. But at that point, my job was to watch Sports Center at night. Like, I needed to know everything that was going on, and I was like, this is the greatest job ever. This is the greatest.
Yeah, but you know what's crazy is that I remember, like, I used to watch tons of Sports Center. I mean, my wife would always yell at me because she's like, she would fall asleep and she would hear the theme music and she'd be dreaming about it or whatever. But
Right.
it's funny. I almost have the same relationship with sports as I do with religion, where I was growing up and I loved sports, and then after a while, I'm just like, I got so into history and philosophy and all these other things that seem much more important and interesting. And I almost lost my passion to watch sports. Like, I'm always, I always felt like, wow, I could be doing something else. Like, I could be watching something more productive or more interesting that could really help me understand myself or the world around me. And what am I getting from this game? It's like, it's entertainment, but that's all it is. It's entertainment. And, so it is. And then, like, now with my kids and like my son, he's really like progressing as a soccer player, and I love just watching him get better. I mean, he just recently, we have like this academy in town called the Pioneers, the Western Mass Pioneers, and he, they've been having him scrimmage with the older kids. And he can't compete because he's only 5 and he's playing with kids that are 6 and 7, and they're more athletic, they're faster, because when you're that age, even 6 months older makes a huge difference. And developing, your muscles and your strength and all that stuff. But his skill, he really understands the sport. And like, every time I talk to him about something, and he picks up on it immediately, and he'll do it. Like, we'll talk about like working on his passing, lead passes or whatever, make your teammates better. Next thing you know, like, his next scrimmage, all he wants to do is assist, and he'll be looking to assist. Or we'll talk about, hey, you gotta, what is it? What good is it you playing? You scoring goals if you're letting the other team score goals. Like, step up your D, step up your, So it's like all these things that he's learning from just the game itself, with like working hard. Like, there's a lot of things that he couldn't do. I remember the first time he went to a soccer thing. I don't even know what to call it, a class. They did like this program for like 2 months or whatever, a couple times a week, and he couldn't do toe taps, when you put your foot on the ball, and he was just getting so mad, and he would cry, and I have to like talk him into giving it another try and giving it another try. And he must have been like 4, maybe 4. Yeah, I would say like he just turned 4, and he was struggling with his balance or whatever. And then the next week we go and he does it. And I was so proud of him. I remember telling him, like, you know what you just learned, right? Like, you learn that if you don't give up on something, you'll achieve it. You just can't give up, and you can achieve it. And it's like all these little life lessons, and like, you're seeing like just the importance of sports in regards to not just developing his skills, but developing his outlook on life, developing, utilizing the sport to understand so many other aspects of the world, and how it relates to it. Same thing with like his teammates, talking about like, hey, I'm like, nobody's going to want to play with you if all you do is dribble by 5 guys and try to score on your own. I'm like, you have to try to make them better, because if they like you, you like them, you're going to work hard for each other. You're going to, play harder and whatnot. And I also see like these bonds. I'm sure you playing too on teams, and I never played organized sports in regards to like in high school, because I was too busy getting in trouble in high school and playing in a metal band and skateboarding and BMXing and doing that whole thing. But eventually, when I really fell in love with playing, in leagues and pickup games and whatever, there is this bond that you get when you're with the right group of guys, and you're all giving it your all, and you can look at each other and you say, hey, I'm going to work my ass off for this team and for you and everybody who's a part of this team, and they're going to do the same for you. And going through those wars, like the wars on a soccer field, the wars on a basketball court. And I know, like, some people are like, oh, you're using that word too loosely. But when you're out there and you're pushing your body to the max, you have injuries, something hurts, or you're so out of breath you don't think you have anything else, and it's all mental strength that will get you to out hustling the other guy or whatnot. Those are wars. Those are personal wars with yourself, pushing yourself, wars as a team. And it creates a bond. I can see why people in the military, police officers, I can see why all these people, anytime you do something physical or you do something where it's life or death and somebody is working to help you or protect you or whatever, like it creates a bond that can stick with you guys forever. And I think there's a lot of good life lessons. I think arts and sports should be not things that are kind of second thoughts in school, but they should be the focus in school, because I think you'll probably learn the most from those things. Did you freeze? Have I been talking to myself? Charlie talk all the time. We're just hanging out and bullshit. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot we're doing a podcast and we should be recording this.
I know. You're like, halfway through, you're like, that's a good point. I hope you're recording this.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, the thing about Whole Foods is just, I hate to say it, but it's like the more liberal the place, the more likely you're going to get shit for not wearing a mask. And like I said, like the redneck town, locally, which it's funny because all the places I made fun of for the longest time, like the, Texas and Florida and like Palmer, which is like this little, like, tons of white trash, local town, are the places that like I want to move to now. Now I go there and I see all these Trump signs and I'm like, God bless America. I'm like making fun of all the like super patriotic America people, and now I'm like, you guys are right, man. Like, who gives a shit if you're white trash and you want to go to a bar at noon? Like you guys are just living your fucking life and you want to be free, and you're letting everybody else be free. So who the fuck am I to judge? Like, they, and then you go to Whole Foods and it's like they're acting like fucking like I don't know what to call them. They're just like so by the book, and it's like you guys aren't even thinking for yourselves. You're not even thinking of this logically. The fact that literally, if I was wearing a rag that there's no science that a rag does anything besides make you happy because I'm complying to your ridiculous rules. Like, it doesn't do anything. And so it's like, it's so frustrating,
less than nothing. It does less than nothing, because the studies show that if you wear a bandana around your face, you trap in all this bacteria, or it gets warm and moist and bacteria grow, and then you're breathing that in. So it's worse than not doing anything for you. It's negative against you. I mean, it can, not at every single particular time, but it can make you feel sicker, worse, because you're wearing it. It's so what? So we have to make everybody like feel comfortable now everywhere, every place we go, for a virus or what's next? What's next? Bubble wrapping yourself head to toe before you get behind the wheel of a car? I mean, are we trying to legislate away danger? It's fucking retarded. It's a waste of effort and energy and all this stuff. Not to mention, you can't, obviously at Whole Foods is not probably the time or place to have the debate. But if you could have the debate with those people, you'd destroy them. They wouldn't want to hear it. They wouldn't want to hear what you have to say. They feel comfortable in their fear, feel comfortable in their terror. They see that as a sign of like their compliance, as a sign of like what a good person they are. Fuck.
Well, that's what it is. It makes you. They're trying to make you. Oh, but it's become so political where it's like now it's just like everybody knows that like it's. I mean, even the people that. But you're right, because I've even with the most lefty of people that I know, I'll have discussion with them about it, and they'll be like, "Yeah, just everybody wear a mask." And now I'm like, okay, let me take some time to like actually dissect the information, and let's dissect how many times we've been misled and all the conflicting information, all this stuff. And you can see, like, you can get through to them, and it's not hard to get through to somebody, because if you're willing to just listen and just listen to all the inconsistencies, it's deniable. It's undeniable that things don't make sense and you can't believe what the fuck they're saying. Like even like the Fauci thing, the whole like, oh, well, he said not to wear masks because he was trying to protect people. It's like, or he was trying to make sure we didn't have a shortage. If that was the case, if he really believed that masks helped, okay, then shouldn't have he said, hey, don't go out and buy masks. Everybody get a rag, get something, make them at home. You can use anything. And that would be better than nothing, than lying and saying don't use them at all. Because if you really believed covering your face could help, from spreading this virus, and if this virus is so deadly, then you literally basically are in some sense responsible for some lives being lost. Because if you truly believe masks could save lives, and because not spreading this virus could save lives, then it wouldn't have been hard to say, hey, anything would have been fine. Like anything you have at home, cut a old shirt up, use anything, wrap something around your face. Don't go out and buy the masks, but a shirt, a rag, a bandana, anything will be useful. Just put something to cover your face to stop the spread of this. But he didn't say that. He just said, and the thing is, he got questioned about it, and they like pushed it a little bit. They're like, hey, are you sure? Because people are listening. And he stuck to his guns. And I don't think at the time he realized how political of a issue masks were going to become. And that, I think that's why he had a change of heart. And and I mean, personally, that's what I think, happened. But yeah, I mean, you talk to anybody logically about this, there's no way you can't get through to them and make them think like, I mean, I know, like I said, I know people who are on the left, and even them, like if you sit down and talk to them, like you're just like, yeah, like you can tell, like they're like if they're resisting, it's not because what you're saying isn't making sense. It's because they don't want to seem like they're agreeing with like somebody who hates Biden and maybe likes Trump better than Biden. And that's the only reason they're resisting. But it just the crazy thing about the left is like they were so anti-government when it was wars and it was legalizing weed, and they understood that. I mean, how many fucking people could have got weed for medical reasons and couldn't forever, and the government kept saying it's equivalent of cocaine or crack or whatever.
It's a Schedule 1 substance. It's still Schedule 1, which means no medicinal benefit. Yet it's available medically everywhere in like half the states. That's government law. If someone says, could you explain government to me in one example? I would say this. Marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug, according to the U.S. government, which means no medicinal benefit to it at all. None. Yet they have also made it available legally in some states, including my state. I can go to the weed store and buy as much weed as I want. But they've also made it available medically in half the states, but it's still Schedule 1. That's the hypocrisy of government in a nutshell right there. They will throw you in prison for it in one state, and you can walk in and buy 800 milligrams of edibles in every single day of your life, as much as just within a 24-hour period, whenever you want. So it's insane. In the corona, the mask situation, you bring that up to people, and it's like, are we really talking about? Are we talking about a mask, or are we talking about something much bigger? And it seems to me like the people that are super pro mask, they're just pro compliance. They want everybody they want every single person to follow the rules, no matter how ridiculous the rules are. And what I'm saying is, I'll follow the rules if the rules make sense and if I agree with them. If I don't agree with them, I'll break them. I don't give a shit. I don't have a problem with that. But I don't need a law to tell me not to murder someone. I don't need a law to tell me not to carjack somebody. I'm not going to do those things anyway. But if somebody's going to get, the problem that I've been having with the mask situation is that there are a lot of strangers out there that feel a little bit too comfortable coming up and talking to somebody that they don't know and telling them what to do. Someone comes up to me and tells me to put a mask on while I'm in a store, they're going to get a negative reaction from me. It's not about the mask. It's about, why do you feel comfortable to come up and tell me what to do? Fuck off. I'm not going to do what you want me to do just because you want me to do it. What if I came up to you and told you to crawl around the store and just ordered you to crawl around the store? It's ridiculous. It's putting a mask on. You're not accomplishing anything anyway. So I've my tolerance on this has been eroded over the last couple of months. I'm at a point now, I walk into a grocery store, I don't wear a mask. I walk through, I grab whatever I want. Anyone gives me a funny look, I just look right back at them and keep going on about my stuff. And you know what I found? Nobody in the last dozen times or so, nobody said anything to me about any of it. Because I feel like my response would be, we're still doing the mask thing? Oh yeah, I thought you guys were kidding about this. This is a joke, right? We're still doing we're still pretending that we're hiding from a virus with paper mache masks that say on the side of the box does not stop the spread of coronavirus. Like, what the fuck are we doing? This is theater. This is medical theater. You guys are this is all one gigantic performance art piece that you're doing. Like those, like the Extinction Rebellion people that dump blood on themselves and roll around on the concrete and say they're protesting. To me, the mask is as ridiculous as that. It's all theater. It's all for show. There's no science behind this. The masks, in fact, the science says the exact opposite. Unless we're wearing like full hazmat suits. You know what I mean?
And why are they suppressing this information? If there's, when I had Mickey Willis from Plandemic documentary on my show, we talked a long time. We didn't give medical advice. We didn't do it like tell people to be violent or do whatever. We just had a nice conversation about sharing ideas. And yet, so Richard Grove, Richard Grove from Tragedy and Hope, he doesn't live too far from me. He lives in Connecticut. And when he was on my show, we kind of became friends. And he just had a birthday party. I went down. His wife's like, "Hey, come down for Richard's birthday party." So I went down there, and a bunch of people, friends of his that I've gotten to know, they're like, "Oh, Mickey Willis's show was awesome." But iTunes isn't like, it doesn't show up on iTunes, right? I'm like, I've heard some people say this, and then I think you saw in the group text that I was like, hey, some people are seeing it, some people aren't. They showed me on their phones it didn't exist. My wife, for some reason, you can see it, and I could see it on my phone and my internet. So it's weird, but it's like, why are they going to such lengths to stop a conversation of just sharing ideas like that alone? I shared a article. Or a video of the guy who created the PCR test, and I'm sure you're aware of him, about how he said it's like not designed to look for viruses. And he had a mysterious death where he died of pneumonia right before the lockdown, mysteriously enough. But yeah, very interesting. But
so
this
did
guy,
the guy that has one of the guys, the billionaire Canadian family in Canada that were the makers of hydrochloroquine. They wound up getting murdered in their home, execution style, a couple months before this whole thing started too.
Huh.
I mean, could be coincidence. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, they couldn't have predicted this, by the way, that Fauci said. I just shared the video again today, or yesterday, Fauci in 2017 saying how the next administration is going to get they have to prepare for some pandemic and some virus or whatever it may be. And then you have obviously Event 201. So it's like, just a weird coincidence, even though they've obviously already been thinking about this for a long time and have had time to prepare for it and been discussing it. And there's tons of evidence of it, but just a weird coincidence. It's wild. It's wild. It's bothersome to me that, people, like you said, people aren't thinking for themselves, and they're not noticing the fact that they're just pawns in a fucking game. That none of the people who are moving them around as pieces give a shit about them. And the same way that, they happen to be, you think, okay, yeah, just let's enforce these fucking masks. But if somebody on the other political party was flexing their muscles and enforcing something you didn't like, you'd be pissed off about it. If it was a war, or if it was a making marijuana illegal, or kratom. I've done a show with Chris Bell on kratom, and something like that. It's like, oh yeah, the government's corrupt, the government's evil. They're flexing their muscles, and then it's just like nobody gives a shit, and until it's something that's dear to their heart, something that that affects their lifestyle. But I mean, listen, and the right's not always right, because there's in cases where like they're all about freedom and liberty, like they are now. and then when it's, abortions, it's like, hey, let's make that shit illegal. It's like,
Right.
wait, or so it's like, it is one of those things where we have to be consistent. And I think that's why I love talking to people like yourself and Sam and Mike and people who they look at ideas and they analyze them and see, do they make sense? They're not like,
Yeah.
okay, which idea is my party promoting? Then that's the team that I'm on, and that's
Yeah.
the team. In that argument, I have to defend this perspective because that's that's my team's perspective. And a lot of times I think we obviously evolve as podcasters and researchers and thinkers, but I think a lot of times the parties change much more than our views do, and
Oh
and then
yeah.
and that's where we end up being like, well, wait, a lot of people thought I was on the left, and now people think I'm on the right. I don't think I've changed that much. And then you
No.
analyze like your feelings on all the issues, and you're like, no, man, I haven't changed that much. But fuck, have these parties changed?
Yeah. The left has moved so far to the left. I used to think that the left was like more compassionate and they were interested in making sure not necessarily that everybody was equal, but that everyone was taking, was kind of looked out after,
Treated
like,
fairly.
and whereas my perception of the right was like every man for himself, like if you don't want to succeed, that's on you. You can sit around and do nothing, but we're going to take this and we're going to work. And if you can't keep up, that's your problem. And we want tax cuts and we're building things and blah, blah, blah. And I always felt they were less compassionate. Now what I've come to, how I've come to view it. And I think in part because things have changed on the left and the right, but now I view the left as unhinged. Not everybody, of course, but the concept of the what the left has embraced, I view that as totally unhinged. And the people as they want you on their side, but if you're not on their side, then you can fucking die. According to them, it's like, whoa, like you guys, that's some compassion you've got there. Gee, let's see if I get enthusiastic about joining you on the left, because God forbid I have a contradictory thought against one thing. You guys will be wishing death on me, or fuck that person. That person needs to die, or screw that. I mean, the left is way more I used to think the right was like, didn't have compassion and they were just meaner. Oh no, the left is far meaner. The left is filled with a bunch of people that feel like if you don't agree with everything that they want, which is constantly changing, you can never make them happy. If you don't want what they want, then they will go out of their way to try to destroy you. To not just like, oh, you don't agree with me, get out of here then. It's like, no, we're going to deplatform you. We're going to get you fired from your job. We're going to dox you. We're going to call up your employer. We're going to orchestrate something to take you down. And then the minute you say, okay, fine, I'll say Black Lives Matter, I'll say it, it's not enough. No, now you got to jump through that hoop. You jump through that hoop. Now you got to jump through another hoop. There's no end. You can never bow down to that insane left crowd. You'll never please them. The best thing you can do when that mob comes for you is double finger, fuck you, get out of here. I don't give a shit what you say about me. You guys are unhinged. Piss off. I'm not worried about you. I'm not going to please you. I'm not going to stand up and say Black Lives Matter because you want me to. There's no ending. So it's not. I didn't change. I always was like socially liberal and maybe fiscally conservative, if you want to put but mostly kind of libertarian. Like, look, I'm going to do my thing. You do your thing. I'm not going to hurt you. You don't hurt me. I'm going to leave you alone. You leave me alone. We do our own thing. That's kind of my philosophy. If you start to infringe on that, you're going to get pushback from me. I'm going to put up a bit of a fight. But for the most part, I just kind of want to be left alone to do my thing. Now, man, I feel like I'm on the right because everything has shifted so much that I find myself, and I know you probably feel this way too. I'm sure a lot of listeners feel this way. I'm no fan of Donald Trump by any stretch, but I find myself in the unenviable position of defending the guy more and more often because I feel like the attacks from the left are so stupid and so without any sort of basis. Like, if you want to attack Donald Trump, you've got 100 things that you can think of off the top of your head that you can go after him for, legitimate things. But I feel like the left these days is just making things up, or they're exaggerating in a way that is discrediting themselves, and they look stupid for doing it. And and I'm like, I used to kind of be more left, but you're making it so unappealing to me that I would rather that you're making it so unappealing that I wind up defending Trump. And then, of course, the assumption is, oh, well, you're a Trump supporter. It's like, no, I'm not a Trump supporter. I just think that your argument against him is stupid. And whereas if you want to complain about the way, what he's done to his businesses in the past, that the guy bankrupted a casino 3 times, which is fucking impossible to do, and yet he did it. All these things. There's plenty of reasons to go after him. Cheats on his wife, shitty with his business partners, sues everybody, talks about, whatever. Knock yourself out. But to like the direction the left has gone has been so unappealing that there's actually a giant movement now, that it's like the walk away movement. And those are people that have walked away from the Democratic Party and have gone somewhere else. Not to say they necessarily have gone to the right, but they're just like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm not going to stay here with you maniacs. You guys are acting like crazy people. And Antifa and the rioting, and then the gaslighting, like, oh, Antifa is just a concept. Fuck off. Really? Well, your concept is trying to burn down the police station. So maybe get a hold of that. So, it's been, we're what, 2 weeks away from the election, or a week away from the election now. And there's part of me, I'm not going to vote for either one of these candidates. I don't like either one of them. They haven't earned my vote. But there's part of me that says, well, I kind of hope Trump wins. Not because I like him, not because I don't think he's a maniac, but if somebody's going to win, I think I'd probably prefer him over Biden, in part because I would like to see the left just completely melt down, because they deserve it. Their behavior over the last 8 months of this Corona situation and the rioting and all that has been reprehensible. I feel like they're an embarrassment. So I kind of, the lady with the green jacket and the black beanie who's screaming at the sky, and we use that. It's in my intro. It's in OBDM's intro. I mean, that lady, I want to see that again, because I feel like she deserves it, because she's been, for the last 4 years, I feel like the left has been so dishonest. And I, in a way that is unprecedented. And I kind of hope they have to deal with this for 4 more years, because it would serve them right.
Well, that's saying, like, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart.
Yeah.
If you're not a conservative when you're old, you don't have a brain. There is that sense of when you're young and you just care about, it's like that saying, that other saying, of racism is taught, you're not born, racist, you're taught racism. And, when you're young, you look at everybody as equals, and you don't give a shit about like what country they're from, what religion they are, what color they are. And when you have that type of thinking, the left seems much more appealing, because it's like, oh, they've convinced me that that's what they're for those values, or that's what their focus is on. It's about being equal, treating everybody equally, and being open to everybody's different perspectives and cultures and opinions and whatnot. And then when you get older, and I think, in some senses, when maybe you get into the business world, or you end up working and money becomes more of a priority, then I think, the conservative side becomes more appealing, because it's like, wait, I don't want to pay more in taxes, or I don't want to, this or that, and or I don't want to, help lazy people or whatever. Right. But I think that for the left, like I still, if that's truly what they believed in, I would agree with them or relate with them much more than I would the right, because personally, I'm not a money person. I'm not. I don't know where it came from. I think it came from my mother, like stressing about money always growing up, coming from a poor village in Portugal, and like money was always just something, like she was always concerned about being poor again, I think, or just not having enough. So she was always stressing about it, and that stress was felt by me, and I'm probably my brother also, but I felt it, and I'm just like, oh, dude, so much of our stresses come from fucking money. And I was an artist growing up. I was writing. I was writing poetry. I was playing music. I was drawing. I was doing all these artistic things where money doesn't exist in that world. It's like it's just about pursuing something that you love and being creative. And I like creating and using imagination. So when I got older, or when now I still like, I don't like thinking about money. I don't like talking about it. I don't like, I just like, it's just something that I don't like it infiltrating my life because I feel like it gets in the way of other things. It gets in the way of me being able to enjoy the moment because I'm like, oh, maybe I should save a couple of bucks on vacation, maybe not go
Yeah.
out to eat, or maybe, it's like, no, how about I fucking just enjoy myself now and I'll worry about making up the money later.
Yeah.
But at least I have this memory. And it also causes a lot of stress in relationships, like stressing about money, stressing about
Yeah.
how you're going to pay the bills or whatever, and all that friction. So life for me seems just happier when I try to I guess spend as little time as possible thinking about money and monetary things. So eh, I relate to and especially with like natural remedies, and always been I think I can relate to the spirituality of the left in some cases. But and the right always seem like cold-blooded capitalists that only care about making money and didn't have a heart. And so it's like, to me, it was like, as an artist, I'm like, what the fuck, these aren't me, these aren't people that I agree with.
Hmm.
And now, as you get, as time went by, you're like, holy fuck, like all of a sudden people think I'm a Trump supporter.
Right.
And I'm like, for the longest time I've held all these values that the left supposedly held, and had all these same type of perspectives and opinions as the left. And it's like, what the fuck happened? Like I almost feel lost, and I think in a way, like much like yourself, I'm sure, I don't really give a fuck what party I agree with. Like I don't care if I don't agree with any party. I don't need a label. Like I like to look at every issue, and like if it makes the most sense, if you have a perspective that makes the most sense, then that's the one I'm gonna agree with, and I'm gonna adopt that perspective. But if it happens to like I say, like it's not that I support Trump, is that Trump seems to support the views I have. And so in a way he supports me. He
Yeah.
supports my views, because my views are open up this fucking country, get people's lives back to normal. You can argue about his tax cuts, you can argue about his foreign policy. That's all fine and dandy, and we can argue about that shit after we get to the most important issue, and that's giving people the fucking ability to live their lives again, give them the ability to be free again, give their ability to experience life, go to a game, hang out with your friends. I mean, how many people are turning 21 aren't ever going to be able to go have a one night stand, or
Yeah.
just, not that that's the most important thing, but like these experiences that in the moment you're having fun, you have a connection, and it's memories that stay with you forever, that
Right.
you laugh about. A friend who drinks too much and vomits in your car, you joke about that,
Right.
unless you really like your car. But it is one of those things where like all these people are being stripped of the ability to live their lives, and we just keep pretending like, oh well, it's because we're saving lives, or it's because we're this, or we just have to wear them a little longer, we just have to do
Yeah.
this. And it's like, there's no fucking end game, there's no finish line. Like
No.
this road doesn't end, and if you guys don't fight back, if you don't get mad, if you just accept the bullshit, then what's going to happen is that it's never going to end, and the new normal is going to be the normal. And
Yeah.
what we should do is resist the new normal and say, no, I'm not going to accept this. Like, okay, you tricked us long enough, and now we want our lives back. And you know what, I'd be fucking okay with a civil war, in regards to a civil war, a peaceful civil war. And like, let's just decide that all you fucking people who want to live in a crazy world where you're all wearing masks forever and never get to see somebody smile again, and never get to walk down the street and run into somebody, and not
Hmm.
have that awkwardness of not knowing if they recognize you because you're wearing a mask, or not, or that awkwardness of not knowing if they're uncomfortable because you're too close. Like if you want that to be the normal, then fucking let's pick some states you guys can all live in, and you can all sanitize the fucking planet, and you can have chemtrails come up, just dropping Windex everywhere, where so you guys can keep your planet, everything super clean, and realize that you're hurting your immune system. And everybody else who wants to be free and happy can go to Texas
Yeah.
or Denver, or I don't know how bad Denver is, but we just have like, I feel like that has to be the final option if things don't change. So when
Yeah.
when I'm defending Trump, I'm really just defending my perspective on these issues, and he happens to just seem to agree with me in many of these issues. When during the debate, when the fact that Biden's even entertaining the idea of another lockdown for fucking cases and a PCR test that's being used for a use that it's not even supposed to be used for, like. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, the fact that you're even that should scare the shit out of everybody. Like, I don't care where you stand. Do you want your kids wearing a fucking mask all day? Do you want
No.
people aren't washing masks. People aren't cleaning masks. There's going to be mold. There's going to be bacteria. There's going to be people throw them in their car, okay? They throw them on their phone. They're in their pocket with their phone, which is one of the dirtiest things ever. And you're putting it right on your face. Like, you're not, like, this is insanity. And it's just like, why isn't everybody upset who just want to fall in love again, go out and meet somebody, be free and alive and experience life? Because guess what, once your fucking journey's over, it's over, man. And you don't get these months back. You'll never get this year back. And if you lock yourself down and isolate yourself all this fucking time for some greater good, you're gonna be real pissed when you look back at your life and be like, I lost a year of my life for a fucking lie. And that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. And I, what it had occurred to me was my problem with the left lately is that I was on their side when they were pushing for equal opportunities, but now they're pushing for equal results. They're pushing that everybody gets the same outcome. And that is unrealistic. Equal opportunities, everybody gets a chance. Sure. Equal outcomes. What? I'm not going to make the Lakers. That's not racism. That's not anything other than reality. Some people are better at basketball than others. Some people can do that for a living. So I can go try out, let's say, but I should have no expectation of just making the team simply because I tried out. The left had gone from equal opportunities, let's give everybody a chance, to let's give everybody the same. Like that, I'm sorry, but I'm not on board with that, because not everybody tries. Not everybody is valuable. Not every, in a particular situation, not everybody brings something to the table. Yeah, you want the opportunity. You think everybody should have the right to, an education? Absolutely. But if you test to get into that college and your test scores are garbage, there should be no obligation for them to take you. But the way the left has gone lately is everybody's equal, everybody's perfect, everybody's shiny, everybody deserves the same. Like, you are delusional. That is not the way the world works. And lately what we've seen is the right has now picked up where they're like, hey man, we're not trying to cram everybody in the same hole. We're not trying to say that everybody is worthy of this. If you succeed, if you're good at what you do, if you have the skills necessary, you move on to the next level in that particular area of whatever you're trying to do. But this concept of socialism, where it had been let's take care of let's have socialized safety net where we don't allow the weakest of our population to fall into poverty and everything. I'm on board with that. I can get on board with that. I don't want the weakest of our population to suffer either. There's some people that need help and they need a hand, and I'm in favor of that. But when you drag everybody down so that nobody is allowed to succeed because everybody has to be equal, then you're being delusional. You're not recognizing nature. You're not recognizing reality, that some people are better and smarter and more gifted at some things than others. Doesn't make them a bad person. Doesn't mean that you're bad because you're not as good as the other person. But you got to get real here. I mean, this idea that we're going to well, and to be fair, the right has their own version of socialism. It's privatizing profits and socializing losses when it comes to Wall Street and big corporations. That's their version of socialism. It's socialism for the multinational corporations. So I'm not in favor of that either. We're in a weird spot where, and then Rogan's talked about this too. He's like, I don't feel like I move too much in my political beliefs, but I feel like the political spectrum has made him look people are calling Joe Rogan alt-right. Like, what? Alt-right? No. The whole concept has changed. So like we're here still living our lives, still having our thoughts, like anchored in common sense, we like to think, and we've gone from being left to right in a generation just because of the insanity of it all. And I don't think it's healthy for people. I think that the kids that are going into college, that are kids going into college in 2016 or and they have safe spaces on college campuses because Donald Trump won the presidency. And so the college opens up safe spaces so the kids can go in there and cry and work out their feelings. I mean, isn't college supposed to prepare you for the real world? In the real world, I don't know. Do safe spaces exist? Because I haven't really found them. Not on that level. And so I feel like it's, the left has been coddled a lot and through the university system. And I don't know that this is accidental. You look at Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. He goes into details about what needs to happen. If you do X, Y, and Z, you can change the country over the course of a generation. Well, it looks like they've already started that process and used the universities to do that. If you're God forbid, you're a university teacher that puts up a syllabus at the beginning, the first day of class that talks about something that makes somebody in that classroom feel all icky inside, they'll go to the chancellor of the dean of students and say, this guy has hurt my feeling. He's created a microaggression against me by putting on the syllabus that we're going to have to talk about the Civil War. And then the next thing you know, there's a petition to get that professor thrown out. This is how we're solving problems now. If somebody triggers you and makes you feel bad, they have to go. They don't have a voice. Well, it's carried over now, of course, into social media. The same sort of philosophy is applying there. And who's doing this? The left. So like, don't act surprised when the rest of the population thinks that you're a bunch of idiots. Because when you do this, when your response isn't, well, I'll go debate this professor and we'll let the best ideas win. No. Your response is, I have to silence that guy because he said something that I disagree with. That's insanity. And the rest of the world is seeing that. They're picking up on that and they're going, you people on the far left, I'm not talking about everybody on the left, but you people on the far left are not serious people. There's no point in even engaging with you, debating with you. You guys look like maniacs. So it's forced people that were on the left into the middle or even to the right, just because they're like, I don't want to be associated with that. I'm not into that. Like, those people are nuts and emotionally unhinged and, like I said, screaming at the sky when Trump wins, which is funny. All that stuff it was funny back in 2016 when it was happening, but now you're seeing it like filter into policies at universities and social media platforms. And because you go through social media or you go through university, you get your degree in 17th century women's lit, which is worth nothing. And you go try and get a job somewhere, or maybe you get a job at Facebook, maybe you get a job at Twitter, and then you take those ideas and try and instill them in this company. And next thing you know, Twitter's policy is if you say something that contradicts with the established narrative, they just deplatform you. They don't warn you. They don't say, we're going to put you in timeout. They don't say you got to change that. They just delete you like you never existed. This is where we're going. And it's a disgusting future where wrongthink is criticized by a silencing of a depersoning of you from social media platforms. And I know that social media platform isn't real life, but still, when you go through the purge that YouTube had, where you've got people that had like 1 million subscribers or 600,000 subscribers that they'd been building up over 10 years and 1,500 videos, and it's gone like that because you had the audacity to say something that some people disagree with. Like, that is unsustainable for life. Like, that is going to fuel a civil war, which I think, if we're honest, they probably want. Somebody does. Somebody wants that.
Well, I wanted to talk about your book, but I think we're running out of time to get a deep dive into that. What I was thinking of doing is either we'll look at our each other's schedule and we'll see if we can record again sometime soon. And then what I'll do, I'll just make this one really long podcast, and and if not, then I'll just release this, and then I'll have you on again in the near future. But I know next week I'm pretty flexible, and maybe we can even find something this week, and I'll just post everything together. I've been doing a lot of longer podcasts when I can, and I know with you that's not a problem at all.
No.
We could go at it all night. So we'll stay connected, because I definitely want to talk about your book, because I know your book, obviously it's fresh off the press. It's going to be available. Well, did it come out already, or
no? I'm waiting for the graphic designer is making one change to the cover, and then once that's done, I upload it and it all goes out. So it'll be available. It'll probably, more than likely, I'll probably have it up by tonight, but it's not technically available right this second.
Okay.
And we're going to do a pre-sale for like a 2-week pre-sale to get everybody in and do all that good stuff. So there's still time.
And I believe I heard you say that on another interview that like there's a discount or something like that if you do we're going to do we're going to put the regular price is going to be $24.99, but we're going to put it down at $14.99. Give everybody a 40% discount during pre-sale. That's just obviously as an incentive, to get people in early. Yeah, thank you.
And get them in early because, and this is not even as a marketing, this isn't some marketing gimmick or anything, but like truthfully, there is a possibility with what we've been going through that they may take the book off of Amazon at some point, just because the topics we tackle are not establishment narrative approved topics, and so if that's, they did it with James Perloff in his book.
I haven't talked to him in a long time, but he has. Which book was it? A recent book?
Recent book. COVID book. I just emailed him and said, tell me what happened, and he said, I just woke up one day and they said it violated their terms of service and it was hate speech and all that nonsense. Crazy. You're like, my book about COVID, written by a guy who James Perloff, who spent 30 years in the medical industry. Yeah, I'm sure that's filled with just nothing but hate. It's digital book burning.
Yeah. So what we'll do is next time you're on, we'll I'll try not to get us completely off track immediately like I usually do, and maybe I'll open up with talking about your book so we can give people a good understanding of what it is, what it's about, who you wrote it with, who he is, all that stuff.
Of maniacs, Jeff Berwick's a maniac in the best possible way.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll do that after we get it off. I'll stop recording. I'll connect with you sometime today, and then we'll see what our schedules look like, and hopefully we can talk again soon. Obviously, next week we have a Union of the Unwanted on the 2nd, the day before the election, which I feel like is going to be perfect timing because it's going to be so much to talk about, and who knows what the fuck's going to happen now till then, with just people trying to bash each other and character assassinations going on every day. So it'll be interesting. I'm really excited about already some of the people I've been hitting up about it. So I want James Corbett on if possible. I've been trying to get James. James has been obviously very busy, and he's hard to get. Honestly, I don't think he's a big fan of those big forum type things. Mm-hmm. Kind of like Chris Ryan, he like disappeared, Yeah,
but, he popped in and then he left. He took one look and went, "Fuck this."
Yeah, and I want to get him on my show. He's another guy on the left that hopefully I can talk to and see if I can have a logical, discussion with them about this topic. Because it's funny, that day that we did the last Union of the Unwanted, that day he released the show saying, I think it was called "Wear Your Fucking Mask" or something like that. So that's why I was super intrigued with having him on and be like, oh, let's see how this goes. But yeah. So, but I mean, I'm harmless, like I try not to offend anybody and then be polite to everybody. So I think that's kind of worked in my advantage with people being willing to come on, knowing I'm not going to attack them or whatever. So,
maybe with James, if we can do it, maybe if you can do it in a smaller group, you know what I mean? You remember when we did you, me, Jeffrey Wilson, Robbie Martin, we did that 4-person one. Yeah. That could be a good one. I don't know. I'm going to send James the book too. As soon as I add the digital, I'm going to send everybody the book, but I'm going to send him an email with the book. So maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to connect him. So maybe I'll ask him if he's interested in doing something.
Yeah. He's awesome. I mean, what I've done in the past, my little trick has been, cause he's always so busy, I'll book him first and then I'll be like, hey guys, can you do a show on this day? let's do a swap cast. And and then I'm like, okay, well, I'll work around James because he seems to be the busiest. He's a different country. And I'm like, I'll see if I can make that work. And that's how it's worked in the past. So, I mean, I could always do something like that too, where I'll book them and I'm like, hey guys, okay, me and James are booked. And then I'll be like, hey, James, do you mind if that day that we're supposed to talk, if I can get a couple guys, can we make it a swap cast? And I've done it that way. So that seems to work the best with James, So anytime I'm like, hey, you want to do a Union Unwanted, let me know. And then he never lets me know. I'm like, I don't know if he's into this. But I think it is hard to, he's always the focus of the conversation, like he's so knowledgeable. And I think when you're there, you're just kind of when he probably has a 12-hour documentary he's working on, he's like, I'm sitting here listening to a bunch of people chit chat. I mean, I find a lot of use out of it. I really enjoy it, and I know a lot of listeners have enjoyed it. But I'm sure it's kind of like when I watch sports now, I'm like, I could be doing something more productive. but but thanks, Charlie. Hey, hopefully you guys, the family's all good with the snowed in day, and we'll keep in touch.
It'll be 60 degrees tomorrow. That's the thing about Denver. It's the weirdest place I've ever lived. So yeah, we'll sort out the schedule and we'll make it work. I'm planning like the next 2 weeks while this thing is going to be on pre-sale. I've got a long list of shows to jump on that people have said, hey, come on and let's talk about the book. So I told Jeff I'm just gonna devote basically 2 weeks to just doing as much press as I can for it. And Jeff's got 200,000 email addresses of people that are subscribers to his Dollar Vigilante. He can get the word out really fast, really easily. I have to do it the old-fashioned way, which is just go on every single show and talk about it as much as I can. So I'll be around. I'll be planning to do that stuff anyway. So
awesome. Well, we'll stay connected and we'll talk soon.
All right, man. Take it easy. I'll talk to you
Charlie.
soon. Bye.
Yep. Take care. Trying to do a podcast and be a normal human being with all the responsibilities and priorities can be hard.
I know. I know. It's a pain in the butt. I just did one this morning.
What? You did?
I just recorded Tim Pashot. He's he was on Union of the Unwanted. He's actually he wasn't this last time. John filled in for him, but he's Liberty advisor. He's a good dude. I met him a couple times at an Acapulco. Actually, we hung out a lot this last time and went to all the bars and shit together. So I just had him on to record something because I'm about to go into like serious promotion mode for this book. And I wanted to make sure I had like 3 weeks of interviews already done, so I don't have to do that.
Stress about it. Yeah. He's super nice too. When he came on, I remember when he first came on. He came on the big one first, and then he joined us again. And I think even Monica from the Propaganda Report asked for his contact information and whatnot. I think he really made a nice impact on the conversation. Really. Just informative and super nice, and just it fits in perfectly with the group of people. So he's one of the few guys that can help people with like Roth IRAs and use them. He can set them up in a way that people can buy crypto with it and gold and silver and all that. So he's got a little niche going there. So I was talking to him about all that stuff. I mean, I understand the financial component of it a little bit, but I don't know crypto the way those guys do. So I don't know about you, but I've been talking about Bitcoin for a while. I remember when it first started getting popular and it kind of became a thing, you had a lot of people in the alternative media world talking about it. And now I look back and I'm like, why did I just bring it up and talk about how cool it seemed, but never bought any?
I was talking about it at 700. And I was not sure what it was going to be valued at and everything. And, I didn't buy any. And I had just had an insurance settlement from a car accident. I got hit by a drunk driver and I got paid out from that. And I took that money and bought gold and silver. And I could have bought Bitcoin at 700. And I was like, oh. And my writing partner, Jeff Berwick, he got into Bitcoin at $3. So he's fine.
Wow.
And he's like, I was late to the party. He's like, I was late to the party compared to some of the people that I knew. Some of the people had to talk me into buying it at $3. I thought it was, he's like, I know. I mean, there was one guy at an Acapulco who was literally a Bitcoin billionaire guy named Brock Pierce.
Yeah, yeah, that name sounds super familiar.
He's got a sketchy reputation. Actually, he was one of those guys that was the co-founders of Den, the precursor to YouTube, where one of the guys went to prison for pedophilia. One of the other guys has like an international arrest warrant for him, and the third guy was Brock Pierce, and he settled out of court. And I was like, "What the fuck are you? Why are you inviting this dude to Narco?" Like, there's some serious questions about this dude. But I saw him there. I didn't talk to him, but everyone's like, "Yeah, that guy's worth $1 billion." He started Tether. There's a company called Tether, which has something to. I don't understand the mechanics of all that stuff. I'm not. I was surrounded by crypto geeks that know all of that stuff, and I was just like, okay. I was just kind of nodding along, but yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about the anarcho world and the libertarian world. Like, you're surrounded by financial wizards. A lot of people who are really smart in regards to finances, which is why growing up I probably related with the liberals more, because I'm like, I'm more artsy and I like to be creative and whatnot, and I don't really care that much about, you know, focusing on money. But some of these guys, I mean, they're just really wizards in regards to that stuff, and really understand the ins and outs of it and how to monetize stuff and whatnot. I mean, this past weekend on Saturday, it was Richard Grove's birthday party, and he's from Connecticut. Well, he lives in Connecticut now, and he has for a while. So I've gotten kind of close to him after he was on my show. I'm like, hey, you live pretty close. I'm like, we could almost hang out. And so we ended up hanging out a bunch of times, and got close with his wife Lisa too. Just like his whole family, super nice. And we're down there, and all his friends are like these, you know, wizards in regards to understanding how to monetize and stuff like that. And it like goes in one ear out the other. I'm like,
yeah.
I just want to play my guitar. I feel like a musician. Like, I just want to play my guitar. Leave me alone. You know,
Not worried about all this stuff.
Yeah, not worried about all that. I feel like it can get in the way of the art, right? Like, if you focus on it too much. Like, that's why one thing I've always loved about Rogan. And by the way, did you see what he uploaded today?
I did.
Oh, I can't wait to listen to that. I'm like, I'm telling you, man, maybe we were wrong about, well, I don't know where you stood on it, but I mean, maybe I was wrong in regards to, I mean, I kept saying it, but I didn't know if I even believed it when I'm like, yeah, he's went to Spotify. Maybe, you know, he's more willing now to kind of go against the grain and do, you know, talk about some more controversial stuff. And, you know, to have Adam Curry on, you know, what's funny about Kanye West? Did you listen to that episode? I actually listened.
I listened to a small clip.
I listened to it. But I listened to it on the way to Richard Grove's birthday party, and because it's a little bit of a drive, and I listened on the way back. And even though I think he's arrogant and he rubs me the wrong way with how like confident and arrogant he comes off sometimes, you take that away, he talks about all the same shit we talk about. Yeah. I mean, he talked about like fluoride and your pineal gland. But you know what kind of pissed me off about Rogan? If Eddie Bravo said the same shit, he would have been like, "Come on, Eddie, come on," like, oh, you know. And it's like not have taken any of those things seriously, but you know, Kanye West kind of just scratched the surface of the JFK assassination and the MLK assassination. He talked about how, like, oh, you know, when you're on top, people want to take you out and stuff like that. It seemed like he was kind of hinting that, like, people want to watch him lose or watch him drown and fail and whatnot. But, you know, like, I just feel like he was getting away with a lot more than maybe somebody Rogan was more comfortable with or respected, maybe quite not the same way. I mean, because when he had Tim Dillon on, you know, everybody knows about that little scuffle about like, oh, well, are you sure about that? Like, you're like fact checking Tim Dillon on a podcast that you're just bullshitting. Like, you're asking him for like evidence. And it's like, are we in a court of law or are we just having a conversation? Because no, I didn't bring my fucking evidence. I didn't bring all my links to the articles. But yeah, so it seemed, I'm like, you know what? Some of the shit he says is actually, you know, it's stuff that I would agree with, you know, if it didn't come from such it's somebody that I think has some psychological issues, you know. But yeah, it was interesting. I'm interested to hear the Tim Dillon, Alex Jones one, but it seems like he's not pulling. Internet. Yeah, he's not pulling punches, man. You know, to even have these guests on.
Yeah. Tim Dillon is hysterical. The idea that shows you're going to have Tim Dillon and Alex Jones and Joe Rogan all do an episode together. I mean, I'm going to have to listen to that. That is
Yeah,
going
how
to
do you
be too
not?
good to pass up. I mean, I'd listen to it if it was just Alex Jones or if it was just Tim Dillon. And I listened to Tim Dillon's doing his podcast. His solo stuff is hilarious. He's out of his fucking mind.
He's so funny. I almost feel like the greatest artists are a little bit crazy. Like I remember having this guy Yap. He's the lead singer of the 1 Minute Silence. 1 Minute Silence, I would say, I always tell people, I'm like, they're kind of like the Irish Rage Against the Machine. Similar
Okay.
style, similar like political and talk about social issues, but from Ireland.
Mhm.
And this guy's just I remember talking to Burton C. Bell, the singer of Fear Factory, and him talking about like how intelligent and just like thought provoking talking to Yap is. And I've been a fan of his forever. Loved, just love hearing him talk. Love hearing he did poetry. He did all these things. Just such an intellectual person, and just had such interesting philosophies and whatnot. And then like right before he was on my show, his manager or agent or whoever helped me book it told me he had like, oh, don't go too long because of he has, how he has Asperger's. And I'm like, wait, what? He's like, yeah. And
Whoa.
I'm like, nah. And I'm like, I just played it off like I knew. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I'm like, I didn't know that. I'm like, but it was funny because it's I wonder if it's what made him like his the way of thinking his pattern of thinking, which I loved so much and was so interesting to me. I wonder if that would have existed if he was completely normal, right? I mean, I
Right.
feel like so many people who just look at things outside the box almost have to be outside the box to
Right.
be able to see things from those unique perspectives. And you look at the artists, musicians. I mean, there's so many. You meet some of these people, and even actors and actresses. Like sometimes you meet, like you talk about, like, oh, that guy's fucking real weird, like that actor. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? To almost like seep yourself into a role and become the character, that doing that over and over again, I mean, it has to have some psychological effect on you.
For
And
sure.
especially if you're like believing. I mean, to be a good actor, you have to believe the things you're doing are real, and the feelings you're pretending you feel are, you have to bring them to life. I mean, it has to have some effect on you. So it's yeah, they're all a little fucking crazy. But you know what? That's what I love about Sam Tripoli. He's
Oh yeah.
I absolutely love Sam. Like, you either get people who hate Sam or love Sam. And I don't know anybody who like anybody personally who hates him, but you sometimes you see it online or whatnot. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, all those things is what I absolutely like. I love the fact that he can't pronounce anybody's name. Like,
Yeah.
it's hilarious.
Well,
Like, it's
when I had him on my show, I
oh, I
mispronounced his
remember
name on
this.
purpose just
It was so
because he'd been
funny.
doing it to everybody else for so long. Yeah, I like that too. I like that. I like I like it when somebody is rough around
Human.
the edges and not like this polished version of what you would expect. Let's say, so he's doing podcasts and everything, like we are. Um, but Sam is not, he can't read the ads the right way, so he just fucks them up and has fun doing that. Can't pronounce people's names. And all of those things would never get you like a second interview at like a real broadcasting company, like a radio show or a TV show or any of that stuff. But since there are no rules in this podcasting, I guess, I mean, unless you put something on YouTube that they don't like, but there's really, you could talk about whatever and you can do it however you want. His style is just perfect. It just totally works for the topics he's getting into, the people he's having on, his personality, his temperament. It's like if you looked at the rules, it's kind of like Howard Stern. Howard Stern did the exact opposite of everything he was told to do to succeed in radio. And by doing the exact opposite, being confrontational, fighting with your bosses, recording it, putting that out, and just being an antagonist and just really doing the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do, and then have that massive success, just goes to show that it's like, well, hang on a second. How come I have to follow like some pattern in order for this to all work? Can't I just do my own thing? If I feel comfortable doing it my way, How do we know that my way is not the right way to do it? And the establishment way, or the, status quo, is garbage. And so you get, that's how things get changed in a good way, is when you take maybe crazy people, maybe just eccentric people, I don't know, however you want to define them, put them in a situation surrounded by normal people, and watch them just do things differently in a way that creates, it either sinks and it turns into a disaster, or everyone starts copying it because they're like, oh my God, this is so great. But you couldn't tell somebody to act like Sam Tripoli and have them do it the right way. You either are that or you are not. He's so authentic in all of his imperfections, and his, in his comedy and his abrasiveness and rubbing people the wrong way and saying things to trigger people. I just love all of it. I love that. I love when people do it differently, get told you're doing it wrong, and then wind up doing it better than anybody thought of. And that's why, if you look at like Chartable and you look at the rankings, like, he's a top 20 show in comedy, which is fucking impossible to do.
Because every comedian has a show. Yeah.
It's a big deal to be that high up there in the rankings. It's like, Joe Rogan and those guys are, Tom Segura, those guys are, in the top 20 as well, and they're killing it. So it's a testament to,
Tom's actually a really nice guy too. I've met Tom a few times. He used to play at the Funny Bone in Connecticut, in Manchester, Connecticut. They had a club there, and they used to book a lot of really good guests. And one time I kept trying to contact him to come on my show, and I don't know if he got back to me or he didn't, or we talked, and I said I was going to go to the show that weekend, and maybe we would hook up. And then after the show, I had him bullshitting with him for a while, and he's like, yeah. He's like, I'll come on, this and that. And then I never heard from him again. And I'm like, but he was, I will say, like, we had a really pleasant conversation. We talked about stand-up and some of the other people I've seen at that club and the people who influenced them or whatnot. But it seemed like a really sincere person. So I've always been a huge fan of his too. It's nice to see like nice people succeed and people that you like. And then, to me, like you said, like, some of his imperfections are what makes him, but it also what lets us know that it's not an act. It's because nobody would fake that. So, it's either you or it's not you. I mean, even if you attempted to fake it, it wouldn't sound or look right. And him messing up, him, being scatterbrained, it reminds me of myself. I do that shit all the fucking time. And that's kind of what I like about him, is like, oh, I'm not the only one who sometimes messes up words or names or whatnot, or sometimes gets lost in his own rant or whatever. And I think people like that because it kind of makes them feel like this is a real human. This is a sincere person.
There's authenticity in it, in a world where that is sorely lacking, especially with anything media related, where you turn it on, whether it's the news or you turn on a movie and it's, Friday the 13th part 10, and you're like, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's just recycled everything. And then you get to somebody, you connect with somebody who is authentic in their, in the good things and the bad things about them. They are who they are, and they put it out there, and it's endearing, and it's but none of that works unless Sam's funny, and he's funny as hell too. Yeah. So it's knowledgeable about this stuff, even though he'll pretend like he doesn't know the ins and outs or how to pretend. He knows a hell of a lot more about this stuff than maybe he's letting on. So I like that. I've seen Tom Segura too here in Denver. He killed it. It was phenomenal. I'm a fan of, I'm a fan of these comedians. I think it's so smart of them to do podcasts on top of it, because for one, we get more of them. We get more content instead of sitting around waiting for the next Eddie Murphy, Delirious to come out, where you're like, oh, I could recite every word, but you only get one of those every 3 years, and maybe you get 2 of them or 3 of them if you're lucky, or Richard Pryor special that's really great. But now you get, with Segura, you get, Your Mom's House and Two Bears, One Cave, and all these. Even if you speak Spanish, you can get it in Spanish, the Spanish versions of it. I mean, so, and that sort of plugs the stand-up, and then you go do stand-up, and the stand-up plugs the podcast, and then the merchandise, and it all works together. And then it's like, I like part of the reason why I like this is because I can see these guys taking the power away from Hollywood, taking the power away from the movie studios or the Netflixes or what. I mean, yes, they'll still do Netflix specials and things like that, but if a comedy club or a Netflix like operator tells them that they're not interested, it's not the end of their career. They can still do their podcast. They can still use that to fuel their stand-up. So I just like the system that they've set up. And I think Rogan, of course, kind of created that and then brings his friends on, which makes them famous. Not that they weren't already, but makes them more famous. And then those guys all have shows, and then they do their shows. And so it's like, I wouldn't know who Theo Vaughn was if it wasn't for like Rogan and all those comedians in that circle that, now I love that stuff. That's the stuff I watch on YouTube. I watch all the comedians. I watch all of us tinfoil hat conspiracy maniacs. I'm certainly not watching CNN on YouTube. I'm watching anything that is the opposite. I could get all that stuff on TV. What I want is the stuff that you can't get on TV. I want it, and I don't want it censored. And I see that tomorrow these maniacs are going to be testifying in front of Congress. The Jack Dorsey, Sundar Pichai, and Zuckerberg, and they're going to be talking about their censorship and of people on their platforms. And I think it's disgusting, and it is at the core of.
And the worst part, it's going to be all fucking theater. They're going to question them, and nothing's going to fucking happen.
No,
and I mean, it drives me fucking nuts. Just that it doesn't matter if you're a Q person or not. It doesn't matter if you like Hunter or Biden and the Biden family or not. The point is, when big tech is deciding what you can see and not see, that's okay when they're suppressing stuff that makes your side look bad. But when somebody gets in the power of that big tech company, or if their agenda changes and all of a sudden they're censoring the other side, you're going to be fucking pissed. What's that saying? Like, though they came for whoever and you did nothing, and then you know, quote
Mueller. Yeah, it's they came for the trade unionist, and I was not a trade union. Then they came for the Jews. Then they came for me, and by then there was no one to speak for me. Yeah, it's what if Jack Dorsey steps down from Twitter and puts Steve Bannon in charge? Just say, and then all of a sudden the left just disappears. Oh, you were happy with censorship when it was happening to the right, but now you guys are gone and you're getting censored and you're getting labeled as fake news whenever you talk about things that aren't fake news. And I'm not trying to say Steve pillar of truth. Let me just be clear. I'm just using this as an example of the most ridiculous far right person being in charge of this platform and skewing it the other way. I see. Now you've got a problem with it. Right. This is our point. It doesn't matter who they're censoring. It matters that they're censoring, because eventually they will come for you or somebody that you like or somebody that you trust, and you'll be like, you're censoring that person. That person is the most logical, reasonable person that I listen to, and you're getting rid of them. Well, if you're getting rid of them, then what does that tell me? Oh, you think that logic and reason can't be tolerated on this platform, so it's short-sighted for one. I know that it's not coming from Twitter and Facebook and Google. I don't think they're putting up much of a fight, but I know that they're being, the order is coming from higher than them. So through these NGOs, and they're being instructed to do this. But once again, like I said, I don't think they have a gun to their head, because I don't think you have to force them to do this. I think they seriously also feel, in alignment with groups like the Atlantic Council, which is, we got to get rid of this Donald Trump character. He's screwing up our plans for all these wars and all these things that we want to do. Now, he's got his own version of insanity, don't get me wrong, but he's not doing it the way the establishment wants it done. Joe Biden, of course, he'll do or be or say whatever they want him to do or be or say. That he has no soul and no sort of core values. But so they want someone like that in there, at least with Trump. And I'm no fan of Trump's, but at least with Trump, he he's a bit of a bull in the china shop, and I think that makes them all nervous. Like, I don't know if we can control this guy fully. I mean, I guess Netanyahu controls him, but
Good
that's
point. Yeah.
that's
The other thing too is like, think about it. Like when there was news just on TV and radio, and that's where the majority of people got their news. It kind of was a fair fight, because if you're on the left, you could watch MSNBC. If you're on the right, you could watch Fox News. And if you're an idiot, you watch CNN. But either way, you had a channel, and so it was like, okay, you can complain about the right, but you have your own channel. You can complain about the left, but you have your own channel, and you have your own place. And I think there is a good thing about having conflicting channels, because the thing is, one will constantly try to expose the other one. So not for moral reasons, not because they care about truth or justice, but they do it because they want to expose the other team. And the other team will do the same thing by exposing the other team. So you have both sides fighting to kind of expose each other, make each other look bad or whatnot. So if you're intelligent enough, you can kind of pick and choose the stories from both sides, and you're like, okay, they're both fucked up and they're both corrupt and they're both whatever. But the thing about big tech is that there is no alternative. It's not like, oh, if you want left-leaning news, or go on Twitter. If you want right, well, you have Parler now, but I mean, there's no equivalent in regards to like size, reach. There's just not many people on Parler compared to Twitter. I mean, you can't even compare the two. So like, if there was a equal size social media platform that was equal in size but lean in the other direction, you'd be like, okay, it's fair, because if you want this, you go there. If you want that, you go there. But the thing is, there's only these, and they're all on the same team. They're all suppressing the same stuff. They're all pushing the same agendas. So you have no alternatives. And that's the part that's really frustrating, is that you have no alternatives. And like we say over and over again, it's when they're controlling the information that it's more than just controlling the information. It's them controlling your opinions and people's perspectives, and controlling the truth, controlling what we consider information, what we consider as facts. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, because we're only as good as the information we have access to. And if I only see information that by doctors that say every vaccine is safe and effective and there's no links to autism, that's going to be my fucking opinion, you know? But if I get that curveball of like, okay, I run into Del Bigtree, I run into the Vax documentary, I'm like, oh, maybe there's more to the story than meets the eye. Maybe there's more to the story than what this guy's saying. Yeah. Then it opens the whole, a door of possibilities. So, that's the thing. Like, what's really bothersome is the fact that even the people that are on the left, that don't obviously have any problem with them suppressing stuff, in the vaccine movement, or suppressing any alternative medicine stuff, or suppressing stuff like the Hunter Biden articles and information. They have to understand that this is great now. This is something you can kind of milk now. You can benefit from it now, but in the long term, like you said, there's going to be a time and place where all of a sudden what you believe in and things you like aren't going to be parallel with the things they believe in and they like, and then you're going to be suppressed, or something you enjoy is going to be suppressed, and then you're going to be upset. Matter of time. I mean, it's the same thing with like when people talk about presidents, like you don't want to give a president or an administration too much power, because maybe you like this administration, but the next guy's going to come in and then he's going to have that exact same power, and then you're going to be upset that he has it. So it's that's the long-term picture people have to kind of consume, and they have to stop just focusing on the fact that I hate Trump and right now they're helping me promote everything that is anti-Trump and suppress anything that is pro-Trump. Like, that's great now, but it might be, in the near future, might come a time where you're going to be in this the suppressed information aisle, and you're going to be with those perspectives and opinions, and you're going to be upset about it. And by then, it might be too late.
We have to be very careful. Right now is very important time with the censorship too, because who's to tell you what's the I mean, we've got fact checkers. Oh, this was fact checked by Facebook. It was said to be false. Who's the fact checker? Some 22-year-old person that's straight out of college that's going to fact check me on the Federal Reserve?
Well,
I'm sorry.
Ben Swan, did you see that video he did where he investigated? So he had a article or a video talking about the 3.7 mil that went from the National Institute of Health to the Wuhan lab, and it got fact checked. And then come to find out, the person who worked for the company who fact checked it worked at that lab or had some links to that lab. Like, it was obviously some conflicting interests, and it's just like, what the are you kidding me? Like, you plan on and the thing is, the idea that somebody who's fact checking doesn't have a opinion, or a person who runs a tech company, somebody who's designing the algorithms, like you like, are you putting them on pedestals the same way we put doctors and politicians? Like their moral compass is perfect and there's no flaws and they have no desires or temptations. They have no opinions or perspectives that could influence what they're doing. Like, of course they have. Every human does. Like, there's no such thing as a completely 100% down the middle person. Like, we all have some views and some perspectives and some opinions, and that's going to have some effect on our job that we do. So if you're a fact checker and you tend to hate Trump, or you work for big pharma, or you whatever you're doing, all who you are as a person, what you've done, who your friends are, whatever your age is, what your age is all gonna that's all gonna affect. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But they're then shaping reality. Like, that fact checker is going to say this is false, and then your story doesn't go up, or it goes up with a big banner over it saying it's false, and everyone goes, why are you sharing these false stories? You're like, because it's not false. Just because some asshole at Facebook said it's false doesn't make it false. Would you like, let's get this fact checker out and I'll debate you on it. Well, obviously that's not going to happen, but that's the point. Is it's like, by that time it's too late. It's too late. You've either had your videos suppressed, or you've had your post taken down, or you've had, it's come and gone, and they put you in Facebook jail for sharing this information. I've been put in Facebook jail 4 times in 2019. I was put in there 4 times. It was all for the same thing. It was all about that school in Connecticut that we're not allowed to talk about, all 4 times. And it's like,
it's amazing. It's amazing how that school can't even be discussed. Like, you can't even talk. So I don't know. Are you familiar with the show? I don't think I've ever said this on the air, but you ever listen to that show, Stuff They Don't Want You to Know? They used to do a video series on YouTube, and then it turned into a podcast. So those guys were Ben, because actually Matt, I couldn't make it, but Ben was on my show years ago, like a long time ago, and we talked about, and they're owned by a pretty big corporation. And what is it? Is it well, how stuff works? That's all like intertwined with I forget which big company that owns all that shit, but it's a big company, and I don't know if it's Discovery Channel maybe owns it. I don't know. So, but anyways, so somebody owns them. When they were on, when he was on, we went down every rabbit hole, and we talked about the Connecticut school. We talked about so many different things, and so I hate to assume this, but I have pretty good reason to assume this. I invited them back on, and they never, like, they wouldn't contact me. They wouldn't write me back. And we had a really fun, good conversation. And I think that somebody told them not to come on the show because we might go down those rabbit holes again. I also and I started seeing their work kind of change slightly, and then they did a special on vaccines, right? Which was not down the middle and was very much like pushing a agenda and perspective, and I think was kind of done unfairly. And I'm like, well, if you guys are real honest about this, why don't you have guests on? Why don't you have somebody on like a Del Bigtree, or even like a Brian Festa from CT Freedom Alliance? Have somebody on from the other perspective to talk about this, because you're just pushing this idea that this is all conspiracy theory and there's no evidence of this. And it was quite obvious. And then the other day, I haven't listened to one of their shows in a while, and they do a lot of commercials now on their show. The other day, I'm listening, and I'm like, oh, I forgot what the episode was on, but I'm like, oh, let me listen to it. I haven't listened to them in a while. And I play it, and believe it or not, the commercial I heard was a Hillary Clinton commercial. And I'm like, what the F? I'm like, you're
Mhm.
supposed to be like a conspiracy theory show that talks about all these things, and now like you can't have Hillary Clinton on a commercial. And I think she was promoting her podcast.
Oh
Like
God.
apparently she has one, and I'm like, you can't have Hillary Clinton on a commercial and expect me to believe there's nobody influencing what you're publishing and what you're putting out there. Like makes me real effing skeptical about what the fuck's going on with your podcast. And so
Hmm.
it is one of those things where like, you know, at one time they put a lot of great work. I mean, their video series was awesome. They were
Oh, I
short,
really liked it.
yeah,
Yeah.
easy to consume. It was scary and it was like it was
Hmm.
cool. It had that vibe, and they did great research. And then and then little by little, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe corporate America went from like, okay, you went from like being a fun little series that nobody, you could talk about these things because nobody took it seriously to now like, hey, people might actually be questioning these things and there might be some truth to some of the things you're talking about. So how about you not talk about it,
Yeah, we
you
can't
know?
have that. So yeah, corporate America comes in, picks up these shows, puts them together under some umbrella company, and then destroys them by not letting them do the show that made them a popular show in the first place. Where have we heard that before? Only it happens all the time, whether they're or with bands or whatever. And hey, you got to dress like this, or you got to play these songs, and you're like, I don't want to do that. Like, well, we own you now. Yeah, I think that is well, the influence of corporations in this, the influence of the media, the corporations in the media. We talk about vaccines and how you don't hear about that on the nightly news because they get all their 60% of their ad revenue from big pharma. So you can't have that. So it's like there's a lot going on behind the scenes that influence these episodes. I mean, not with you, not with your show, or not with my show, but once you get big, that is the downside to it. Is okay, you've got a lot of eyeballs on you, and if you're saying something that is controversial, and maybe somebody at that corporation is like, oh, we can't have you talking about this stuff, and maybe that's what's happening at Spotify, maybe not, I don't know, but the Rogan thing, he comes out, and all of a sudden the SJWs at Spotify start to flip out and say, oh, we can't be talking about this. We have to have the ability to censor him. Well, it probably won't happen with Rogan, but only because he's the biggest. But everybody else, I mean, I could see how that could happen real easily. Somebody picks you up,
Absolutely.
some bigger, channel picks you up, and then starts to have control over, so it pays you a bunch of money or gives you, some nice ad revenue, and then they start leaning on you and saying, well, can't talk about this. Or, hey man, I can't put this episode out because you're bashing big pharma, and we're going to run an ad from AstraZeneca and this, and we can't do that. So I don't know what you want me to do with this episode. We're going to have to toss it. And you're like, what? So this is censorship comes in a variety of forms. It can be overt censorship like we get on these social media platforms. It can be just self-censorship. It can be like you just don't invite certain guests on because you're going to get into trouble with them, not because they're bad people, but because you're going to be talking about the things they want to talk about, which are, very hazardous to the status quo. So those people don't get. So next thing you know, you've got Mike Baker on your show from the CIA. You know what I mean? You're like trying to pretend like that's a good interview. That's not a
But
good
isn't
interview.
it? But isn't it funny how he would talk about the MLK assassination, and he's like, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Like, well, without a doubt, that's one I believe." And I think it was the Martin Luther King assassination, and it's like, and then other things he was like, no, he was poo pooing and whatever. So it's like it's weird how like certain things are. I mean, same thing like Noam Chomsky. Like this
Mm-hmm.
guy talks about manufacturing consent. I mean, a great great research into Edward Bernays and how they can manipulate the public. And it's like, wait, so you're basically talking about brainwashing the public, and yet like, and all the corruption that goes into foreign policy and all that stuff. But wait, the fact that the government could have known that September 11th was going to happen and let it happen, or even had a hand in it, that seems too
He's
crazy to
like,
believe.
la 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 la
Yeah,
la
that's what
la.
I'm saying.
Every time
Like,
you bring up 9/11 around Noam Chomsky, he's like, I don't. No, it happened. 19 Arabs with box cutters, and you're like, dude, you're so close. You're there on every other topic, but 9/11, you've just shut it off.
and I don't know
That's
if it's on purpose or if it's like, have you ever had a logical conversation with somebody and then there's just one topic that they just won't, like, you're just like, wow, man, like what, you just went off the rails on this topic. Like you just won't you won't listen at all. Like, and you don't know if it's an emotional thing, if it's like a too hard to believe thing, or what it is. But somebody can be really good on one thing. I mean, who was I talking to where we're talking about Edward Snowden? And I was talking to somebody. It was a podcast. I was either interviewing or being interviewed, and we're talking about Edward Snowden and like how a lot of people in the alt media world think that he's, CIA, or he's just, he's just controlled by somebody, and he's not the noble person that he tries to come off. But I'm like, a lot of normies were, who considered a lot of stuff that he said conspiracy theories. I'm like, he kind of justified that we're right, and he kind of, brought to light a little bit more information, somebody who's a little bit more credible, because he did work for the NSA and for Booz Allen and the CIA or whatnot. And then they're like, yeah, but he doesn't believe, he kind of poo-poos chemtrails and this and that and whatever. I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, it doesn't mean that he's trying to be credible for the purpose of putting out bad information on other topics. Maybe he just doesn't believe like, I know people who will be right on board in regards to JFK, even 9/11, but maybe they'll resist on the vaccine thing, or vice versa. Somebody believes that, yeah, there's a vaccine agenda being pushed, but then you talk about 9/11 and they'll be like, no, but I don't believe that. So it's like, just because they don't agree, or they haven't saw the light on all the issues, it doesn't mean that necessarily it's on purpose and they're trying to trick us. Sometimes it's just like you said, like they're there, but they're not quite there yet on some things.
Yeah, I like Chomsky. Don't get me wrong. I like him. I like that he exposes these things and talks about manufacturing consent and talks about to me, it's just surprising, because when you know all that, and you know how the government works, and you know what compulsive liars the mainstream media is, and you know how the intelligence agencies actually operate, those are sort of the prerequisites that you need to understand 9/11, understand the scam of 9/11. And the fact that he knows all those things yet still can't connect that last dot, to me, just seems mysterious. But I'm not going to discredit the rest of his work because of that, because who knows, maybe somebody he knows got killed on 9/11, and it is just his brain will not allow him to go that far. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to psychoanalyze a guy I don't even know, but there could be a variety of reasons why. I still think, I still find him to be credible with regard to everything else. It's just funny to me that he doesn't get that 9/11 component. But then again, I don't really need him to. It's not he doesn't owe me that either. So if he believes it or doesn't believe it, that's on him. That's fine. I still like his work. I still think he's a credible person. I just wonder about the 9/11 component to it. But hey, look, it's not required of him to believe every single thing I believe in order for me to connect with what he's saying. So because good Lord, I mean, if you and I believe a lot of non-conventional things that on the outside, people looking at us think maybe we're reaching for something, or we want to believe it, which is possible. I mean, look, it's possible that we want to believe some of these things, but I'm not throwing things out. Like this new book, we have 254 footnotes in it. I didn't make it up. If I'm going to, in fact, I was like super aware of the fact that when I start talking about things that sound crazy in book format, well, in the first book, The Octopus, I was backing it up with quotes. I was using quotes as sort of my version of footnotes. I would say something insane, and then I would show all the quotes for people that were backing up, that same thing. So that was, I intentionally didn't put footnotes in it in the Octopus book, because I wanted the format of the book was such that the quotes were serving as my footnotes. But in this new one, I had to footnote all that stuff, because people are going to be enthusiastically trying to find holes in your argument when you start talking about things that rub people the wrong way or expose components of this reality that we live in that conflict with people's, like a normie's view of the world. When you start challenging that, you better have your shit together. You better have you better give them a place to go to double check this, or else you're going to get a lot of people just being dismissive of it. So that was, so I feel like same, like with these guys like Noam Chomsky or Matt Taibbi, who I love Matt Taibbi. He's the best, but he thinks that me are a bit off. He thinks that we're a little bit crazy. So I have to do a super good job of tightening up my arguments and making sure I don't give anyone anywhere to go with it, because I know that when you start talking about things like chemtrails or whatever, you're going to have people going, you guys are crazy. This is all bullshit. This is make believe. And you have to say, let me point you to John Brennan on camera in a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing telling you that the CIA has been running the chemtrail program for years and years and years. No longer theory, no longer speculation. I don't have to put, I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat. You can say it's crazy, but I can show you the guy in charge of it openly talking about it on camera, into a microphone, in front of a room of people, knowing that this information is going to get out. So that was, in this world that we live in, where everything's bullshit, right? And everybody's lying and everybody's trying to manipulate you. Like, sometimes you have to back up your argument, or you have to make a good argument, and then you have to back it up, and then you have to stand behind it, and you have to not be afraid to fight these people that want to challenge you on it. So, I mean, that's, good Lord. I mean, if anybody knows about having random strangers challenge your beliefs, it would be Jeff Berwick, who wrote, who I wrote this book with, who has been in the middle of, everybody's been, they've been calling him crazy forever. I mean, that half the people love him, half the people think he's insane. But when you can show it, when you can show your track record, like he's talking about crypto for years and years and years, and you can say, well, listen, man, I was in it at $3. You dummies, I told you to buy it. You didn't buy it. Look where it is now. Or if you're talking about the Federal Reserve, or you're talking about all these interesting topics, A, have your argument together. B, have some supporting evidence to back it up, or you're going to be, in this world where everyone gives you 2 seconds to prove your argument, you're going to get discredited here. So it's a strange time. Obviously, you should always be factual, and you should have, your argument together, but never has it been more imperative than right now.
Well, it was a great transition into, finally, like 3 hours later, we're going to talk about your book. But yeah, let's get into your book. Let's for people who are listening who might not be familiar with it, some of the history with it, some of the background to it. Like, how did you and Jeff get together? How did you come up with this idea, and how did you come up with this topic?
Yeah, so the book is called The Controlled Demolition of the American Empire. It came out of a conversation I had with Jeff. So Jeff Berwick is the dollar vigilante. He is the founder of Anarchapulco, which is the largest anarchist cryptocurrency health and wellness convention in the world. It happens in Acapulco, Mexico, every February, it has for 6 years at least, and it looks like it's going to happen again this year. He's a Canadian guy.
It is going to happen again?
What's that? Yeah, he said it's going to happen. He said 2021 it'll happen. I don't know what that will look like, but
you going? You think? If
I'll go. Yeah, for sure.
Because I've been looking for a reason to go to Mexico for a while, and
man, I'm telling you, this is the reason, because you're at a resort that is right on Princess Munda. People can look that up in Acapulco. It's this resort. It's right on the beach, multiple pools. It's just a fucking Mexican resort. It's beautiful. I mean, it's a great place. You can walk right down through the resort, step right onto the beach. There's horses out there. You can ride horses. You can go surfing. You can do whatever you want. But if you were there for the conference, you're going to get Ron Paul and David Icke and Cynthia McKinney and Paul Bigtree and Sherry Tenpenny and all, there's more people speaking at that event than you have time to watch, because it's happening on 4 different stages. It's like going to Coachella, really. It's like going to Coachella for the alternative media where you're like, which band, you get like a pamphlet,
Yeah,
like a
remember that.
booklet. And you're like, okay, at 11 o'clock on the main stage is going to be this person. And then after that at noon, we'll go to the Anarchapulco, or we'll go to the Cryptopulco stage and hear, some Bitcoin millionaire explain the details of it. And there's so much to do. So anyway, that's Jeff Berwick. He's a Canadian guy who runs the Dollar Vigilante, who lives in Mexico, who's an anarchist, who's, when people told him, oh, you like anarchy so much, why don't you go to Somalia? He booked a flight to Somalia, and went and said, let's go check it out. Or when Venezuela was having hyperinflation, it's like, well, let's see what hyperinflation looks in real life. So you go to Venezuela and go there and report on the streets. He does this with Luke Rudkowski all the time. When you're on a boat sailing through the Caribbean and you come up to Epstein Island, when you're Jeff Berwick, you pay the boat captain a little bit more money to take you right to the dock and let you off with your video camera, which is what he did with Luke. So if you see the videos of storming Epstein's Island, that's Jeff. So you get a perspective on the world that is so different and so fantastic. When we put our heads together, we came up with this book. And so it came out of this conversation that we had back in 2018. I was promoting The Octopus of Global Control, my first book, and I went on his podcast, the Anarchast. And when we got done recording, we stayed on and we were still chatting. And he said, it's all coming down. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, everything, the empire, it all. And I was like, well, yeah, it's unsustainable. We got into this conversation. He said, we should do a book together. I said, yeah, well, let's talk about that. So I went to Costa Rica and started on it there. The format and the structure of it, the layout of the book. And what we did was I took that conversation of it's all coming down and married it with the idea of the controlled demolition of an actual building, like a 47-story steel high-rise building that came down in the afternoon of September 11th in New York, the one that nobody talks about. So you compare that the way you would take down an actual building and make the comparisons to the way you would take down the American empire. So the main core chapters are a rotting foundation, pre-weakening of the building, identifying the support columns, detonators, who wired the building, ringing the alarm bells, pushing down the plunger, and clearing the debris. And then through each of those 8 categories, we get into a variety of topics. So like a rotting foundation explains systemic issues. So we're talking about crumbling infrastructure. We're talking about corrupt medical systems. We're talking about governmental stupidity, just the way government is set up. We're talking about the Freemasons' influence on the creation of the American government when it first started and how that plays into it. We get into like pre-weakening of the building. These are the policies that hurt, that have been set up decades in advance to destroy this empire in a way like the way you would pre-weaken a regular building. You don't blow out all the columns right away, but you go through and you cut certain supporting connections in various places around. It doesn't really affect the structure of the building right then, but when you blow it up, it's good that you've removed all these support columns because or you've pre-weakened it in a way so that it doesn't require even more explosives. You cut things here and cut things there and whatnot. So we're talking about the policies that hurt. Globalization, private prisons, the rise of China, how we've outsourced everything to China and we've sort of worked on gutting the economy or the manufacturing capacity of America. And that has that's like a time bomb that you set that goes off 40 years later. And that's kind of what we're experiencing. Then we get into identifying the support columns. And those are things like, these are the things that need to be destroyed. And we're talking about critical thinking, ruining the education system, creating constant conflicts through the military, indiscriminate wars everywhere. That destroys peace and freedom and stability and things like that. We get into rigging the detonators, where we get into false flags, quantitative easing, central banking, never-ending wars, divisions of the public. So it just goes, we just tackle all these topics step by step in a way that I think makes a lot of sense, where if you understand how a building goes down and you've watched enough Vegas hotels where they, where boom, 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 and then everything starts to come down symmetrically. Well, that is how you bring down a building if you want to do it into its own footprint, so you don't have to expend more energy to tear the whole thing down. Our overall premise is this: when you're trying to create a one world government, it is imperative that there are no longer any superpowers in your way to block that. 30 years ago, the Soviet Union was destroyed in quite a similar fashion. They were dragged into a never-ending war in Afghanistan. They had their currency manipulated. There was rampant looting and corruption inside the government. Gee, where have we seen all of these things? We're experiencing this right now. And so there's a lot of similarities. One of the things that we're good at, like guys like you and me, is pattern recognition. Well, actually, human beings in general are really good at pattern recognition, but more so for us in recognizing scams that have been run over and over again, so that we see the same thing playing out. So when you look at how the Soviet Union was taken down, you'll see some of the same things happening for us right now, that this American empire is taken down. And when we talk about the American empire being destroyed, we're not necessarily talking about America being destroyed. Think of it like the United Soviet Socialist Republic, USSR. That was Russia and all of the countries that it captured, Belarus and Czechoslovakia and Hungary and Yugoslavia and all these. When the Soviet Union was disintegrated, when it was destroyed, Mother Russia stayed. They prioritized that to keep that together, but they let go of all these other nations. They let go of their influence there. They let go of a lot of what had made this an empire. You had to pare back. You couldn't keep it all going. So you focused on Russia the way a mountain climber stuck on Everest, the way your body prioritizes the blood flow. It keeps it in the center core for your organs and your brain, keep them functioning. You'll lose the tips of your fingers, you'll lose your toes because the blood doesn't get there, but the blood is needed in the center part to keep that as the priority. Same thing with the American empire. The focus will be on keeping the United States together, but its influence around the world, the 1,000 military bases, the use of the petrodollar as a carrot and stick around the world, the use of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency gives us a tremendous amount of power. The fact that we've started all these indiscriminate wars and things like that, and we've captured these countries. They're not officially part of America, but you're going to tell me that countries like Ecuador won't do what America wants them to do? Of course they will. We just tell them this is what you're doing. So our influence around the world has been massive for a long, long time. And some of the things that allowed that to happen, Federal Reserve printing press, the fact that we have the world's reserve currency, we have the petrodollar that used to be backed by gold, now it's backed by the military. All of these things have kept us as this preeminent force in the world. But a couple of things have happened. First of all, our act is getting really old around the globe. There are a lot of countries and people that are tired of seeing us do what we do, myself included. Just randomly starting wars in foreign countries, never officially declaring war, blaming them for the things that we ourselves are doing, and then invading them and then claiming it's humanitarian aid or regime change, or we're getting rid of some boogeyman that we've demonized. And then we're going to put this new guy in there because we want a fair democratic election. This guy's like totally connected to us. And, so our behavior around the globe has been reprehensible for a long, long time. And there's a price to pay for that. And when you get to a situation like we are right now, the American empire is very unstable. The Wall Street, the financial system, is a house of cards that is liable to come down at any time. We owe almost as much money in interest every year as we spend on the military, which is $1,000 billion a year we spend on the military. We spend almost that same amount on the interest on our debt that we've borrowed from a private bank, the Federal Reserve. You can't spend $2 trillion on interest and wars and have money around to take care of your people. So what's the priority? Well, the priority is clearly banking and wars. and the people can fuck off as far as the American policy is concerned. So this stuff, it doesn't end well. And we had to get really honest about what we saw. In fact, part of what was interesting was we started this book in 2018, and we were ready to go to print with this in March of this year of 2020. But we held off as soon as the Corona situation hit. We just said, okay, we have to stop for a second and see how this plays out, because this is going to be, we're going to have to incorporate this into the book, which we did. But one of the interesting things that happened when I went through towards the end and made sure that everything looked right was that I had to change the tense in a lot of these things. From things that we had predicted as being future tense, I had to change them to past tense, because in the 2 years when we had started writing the book, some of the things that we said were coming true had already happened. So I had to go back in there and make it, like a past tense, verb correction here, because we were talking about things that over the last 2 years had come true. So we're like, okay, so that's mildly annoying that we have to go in and make those changes, but I'm not going to worry about that too much, because overall it's a confirmation that we were on the right track, because it's true. So so after 2.5 years getting this thing shaped and ready and incorporating the Corona situation in it, boy, I'll tell you, it's going to really blow people's minds, because not to give away the ending, because it doesn't, but we are optimistic, because even though these bad things are coming, and we described this controlled demolition of the American empire like a tsunami that is coming, that you're not going to be able to stop, that you're going to need to get to higher ground and drag your friends and family and let them know, get to higher ground. You're not going to be able to stop it. But after it comes through, there's going to be a lot of pain, but there is also going to be a lot of opportunity for people that have positioned themselves right. So things are going to go on. The landscape of this society is going to look a lot different. But if you position yourself correctly, you can either minimize the amount of pain that you're going to experience through this, and maybe even put yourself in a position to profit or come out the other side. So that's our hope. I mean, we feel like, from that conversation that we had about how this whole thing is coming down, kind of our guiding principle in this was, if we see this and we feel like we have evidence to back this up, where this is going, and we don't say something about it, well, then that I couldn't live with myself if I did that. I think Jeff feels the same way. Like, we have almost like an obligation, a duty, however you want to look at it, to get the word out about this, because it's going to change things. It's going to change society. And we've seen in 2020, God, I mean, if ever there was an advertisement for this book, it's been 2020, because we've seen the changes, the things that we never thought would happen. Oh, that's crazy, man. If I told you December of 2019 that everybody's going to be wearing a mask in a couple of months, and they're going to shame you for not doing it, and they won't let you in stores, you'd be like, get the fuck out of here with that. You're out of your mind. Well, guess what? Here we are. So some of the things that we lay out in this book sound a bit crazy. But like I said, I got 254 footnotes that back it up, that say that there's some truth to this. There's a whole lot of truth to it. And so hopefully we'll get the word out there. We're not going to be able to, prevent it from happening. We're not going to be able to make it so that everybody is saved from this, but we feel like we have an obligation to get there. And so when we put our voices together in this, and Jeff's distribution platform, because he's got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that don't just watch him on YouTube, but they also get his newsletter every week too. So we're going to get the word out to these people, and hopefully we make a difference. But it's been one of those books that it's like, I'm glad we're done. I'm glad it's going out. But I'd be lying if I said I took any pleasure in talking about these topics, because some of them are kind of dark, I mean, some of where we see things going is not places I would like to go, but you know what, Ricky, it's like anything. The first step is acknowledging that you have a problem. right? If you've got an addiction or some sort of issue, it's like first thing you need to do is acknowledge that you have a problem. And as an American here in America, I take no pleasure in saying this, but we've got some big problems. And if we keep going the direction we're going, it's going to be bad for a lot of people. So hopefully we can wake some people up and maybe try to turn this thing around.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the goal, right? Is even though, like you said, some of this stuff is dark and depressing, if you realize it's happening or you realize something is happening, you're much more likely to resist and prepare for it. And when you start seeing the first baby steps of like, okay, this is the beginning, then maybe, maybe people will realize like, holy shit, maybe I should do something. Maybe I should resist and be more upset about what's going on. It just the future, I think, in so many different cases, the economy, military, I mean, everything else, from contact tracing to forcing vaccines. I mean, it's the future looks scary because all those things could be possibilities of being just the norm, being things that are just a part of our society and our world. And, it's there's no better time than now for podcasters to have these conversations and attempt to talk about this as much as possible. And I know a lot of people, I mean, for a while, I remember the time where like everybody just had like COVID fatigue, and it's just like people were so sick of hearing about it and people were sick of talking about it. But it's just like it's not going away, and it really is the foundation to all these issues, and really in many cases they're using it as a justification to push all these other agendas, that it's like it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's like you can't not talk about it. You cannot talk about how it's affecting the world and how it's being used for other agendas. And like I said, like even though at times I feel sick of talking about it, I know if I don't talk about it and if I don't get upset about it, then I'm just going to get more upset later because things are just going to get worse instead of better. And it's just, we live in a fucking crazy world. And I know there's a lot of people out there that feel helpless and hopeless. And, I had, I think it was the last episode I did with Tease. He has this show called Conspiracy Synergy. And it's awesome, like kind of, I mean, I call it a show because it really isn't a podcast. He talks about alternative media, his first episode, and talks about, doing research. And it's kind of like a video you could send to somebody like a newbie who just completely, is never researched any of these things, but he talks about with humor and he talks about some of the issues or whatever. But he, when I was talking to him, he's like, you kind of feel like you're at a funeral, like humanity's dying, and we're all at this funeral, and we all know there's like a death in the family, and this person died, and we're all sad, and it's just like sometimes it feels like that. It feels like everybody just has this look on their face, like they just came from a funeral, like they know something's wrong, they know something's happening, they don't like where the world is going, but they feel helpless, like they're dealing with a tragedy, and like it's almost like the death of the world as we knew it and as we loved it. Yes. And everybody's just like acting like, we're at a funeral, like in regards to you can't bring this person back. But the thing about a funeral is that you can't bring that person back. They're gone forever. And I understand mourning and being sad and having that helplessness, but we're not there yet. Like we're not at, we didn't go so far down the road that we can't reverse it. We can still do something. And I think, people have to stop acting like we're at a funeral and be upset and realize that, like, no, don't just accept things. Don't feel helpless. Don't feel defeated. And a lot of people have that look and feeling of being defeated. It's like, we don't have to be defeated. We don't have to accept this. This world that we're all, I mean, nobody, regardless of what side you're on, nobody can say that they like the way things are. And if you don't like the way things are, and if you don't like the new reality we're living in, then then don't accept it. Then stop being okay with it because your political party's okay with it. Stop acting like it's going to be temporary, because all these people who are wearing masks who think like it's just temporary until we get through this, wake the fuck up. Like,
Wake
this
up,
isn't
people.
temporary. Viruses don't disappear, and they haven't given you any type of light at the end of the tunnel. Like, hey, is once we get to this many cases, everything will be okay and things will get back to normal. All they've been saying is the new normal, vaccines, the new normal. So if that's what you're waiting for, then you're fucked, man. Because once you realize like it's too late and we've accepted this stuff and we didn't get upset, and this has just become the new, then the new normal has become the normal, then we're going to be really unhappy with what we've let happen to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jeff and I spend 400 pages in this book essentially eulogizing the American empire. But this is not necessarily a bad thing, because some of the aspects of this empire that are going away are things that need to go away, that we want to go away. Our behavior, the starting indiscriminate wars, the use of the use of the Federal Reserve to enslave humanity, all these things, these are unsustainable policies and methods of conducting business. And so part of me is like, well, if what I'm saying in this is sounds like we're eulogizing the American empire, don't get too sad. You know what I mean? Part of this, it's like the guy at the funeral, hey, look, we're all here at the funeral, but let's be honest, maybe this guy wasn't the best guy. You know what I mean? Let's be real. Let's be real frank
That's actually
here.
a very good point, because we act like all like the death of the world as we know it, like all aspects of it would be bad if it all died and started over. But there's, like you said, there's a lot of aspects of it that we were complaining about prior to this, that are probably going to be okay with it going away. And yeah, I mean, absolutely, I can see that. It's almost, instead of seeing it as a death of something, let's see it as a birth of something new that we can mold into something we like.
That's exactly it. Because as this American empire crumbles, you won't miss certain aspects of it. It will give you the opportunity to try something different that might work. Let's be honest. The direction we're going is endless wars, endless money printing, endless vaccines, masks covering your faces, the media lying to you constantly. So we're going to start another war. We're going to start, we get into a concept called the Thucydides trap, which is a Greek concept talking about how the rise of a new empire challenges the existing empire. And over the course of recorded history, there's been 16 different occasions where there has been an existing empire and a new empire has challenged it. And in 12 of the 16 times, 3 out of 4 times, it ends in war. And what we see now is the established empire of America and the rise of China. And this, it could be speculation if people talk about, well, maybe America would want to start a war with China. Watch your news now and hear and start listening for China, 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 the demonization of China. They're starting it. They're going down this path towards a war with China, which we don't want. So the death of the American empire, not all a bad thing. I'll be honest with you. There are components of it that are going to hurt a lot of really good people. I don't like that. There's some aspects of it that are going to get a lot of psychos out of power here in the running the American government. So we're going to have some change. It's change at its core. It's change. Change can be a good thing. Change can be a hard thing. It just depends on what sort of change. It depends on who you are, and it also depends on your ability to adapt. The thing about, they talk about like Darwin and say like, oh, only the strong survive. No, that's not what Darwin was talking about. What Darwin was saying was only those that are able to adapt will survive. So the United States will still be here in some form or fashion, but how you adapt to the new environment is going to dictate how you perceive, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. There will be some people that will Chomsky it, put their hands over their ears and say, I don't want to hear about this. But there will be others that will say, that will recognize this and say, okay, we have an opportunity to do some great things. We have an opportunity to do things different. We can reimagine our currency in a way that isn't fiat controlled by the central bank. Jeff, of course, brings that component into it. We have a way of looking at the world without, constantly starting the wars, because if we are not spending $1 trillion on our military, we don't have the capacity to start all these wars. So it's just getting us to acknowledge that things are going to change. They're always changing, but things are going to change in a very big way. And when we saw, frankly, I always thought the trigger for this collapse was going to be banking in general and Deutsche Bank in particular. I thought Deutsche Bank would be the trigger for this. And because they're a zombie corporation that is just barely functional. They are over leveraged, their books are a mess. But when you're talking about the big banks, they're all interconnected. So you take down one, it has a cascading effect. It takes everybody down. When you've got $2 quadrillion in derivatives sitting on your books of all these banks, and those are bets against, bets on bets that are made with other banks, and one side goes bankrupt and has no ability to pay on that, then it affects the bets that they made with all these other banks, and all the other banks start to come down too. So it is contagion when this happens. So my feeling was that Deutsche Bank was going to be the trigger for this. And in fact, when I was in Mexico doing the presentation about the book in February, my premise, I explained a little bit about the book, and I said, keep your eyes on Deutsche Bank. So when the Corona situation hit, Jeff and I said, oh, this is going to be the new boogie. They're going to blame everything on this. This is the perfect scapegoat, because the financial system was about to collapse anyway. But the bankers will never take the blame for it. Back in the TARP days of 2008, they just say, oh, if you don't give us $700 million or $700 billion, we're going to, you're going to have riots in the streets. Well, and they never took any sort of responsibility. It's like, oh, it was just unforeseen circumstances. Well, guess what? We gave the banks all this money. They're up to their old tricks again. They're blowing up the economy once again with all of their reckless ways. But they're never going to take responsibility for it. But what perfect cover to say, it wasn't us, it was this virus. It's like this invisible virus, kind of like those invisible terrorists, like couldn't have been us, couldn't have been our reckless behavior, or our stupidity, or our greediness, or anything. It's never that. It must be this virus. So once we saw that, we're like, okay, let's just slam on the brakes here. Let's give this about 6 months, and let's see how things really play out, and then incorporate that into the final version of the book, which we did. So it gets, we tackle a variety of topics: New World Order, false flags, China, globalization, education system, the crumbling infrastructure, CDC, Event 201, police brutality, safe spaces and those maniacs, climate change, lobbying, Federal Reserve, the death of American exceptional. I mean, we get in crypto, you name it. It's in this book, because you've got to kind of give everybody the big picture, so that they understand that this is not, it's not one or two things. It might be blamed, the trigger might be blamed on one or two things, but it's a spider's web of problems that have been, created for the American empire. Because these people, we talked about the World Economic Forum too, and this is kind of, when you take a look at the globalist machinery like the United Nations and the World Economic Forum and groups like this, what you see is that they have big plans for the entire world, a lockdown of the entire world, of digital currency for the entire world. And it worked. Their plan works a lot better when nobody in their group is necessarily married to any one nationality, where it's not America centric, it's globalism centric. It's working for a new world order, like what they call it. They call this a new world order, and that is a one world government run with a one world currency, with a one world army, which makes you wonder, if there's a one world government and we're all in this one government together, why do you need an army? Who's that army fighting? You know, if there's no, if it's just one big group, then there's not another group. Well, obviously the one world government's one world army is for us, the people. We are the enemy. We are the people they want to control. And that might have been conspiracy theory to a lot of people before this 2020, but I'll tell you what, take a look at 2020 now, and you tell me, is the government on our side or against us? Because all I see is that it's the people versus the government. I don't see any government policies that are working for us. I see it all being marched towards a one world government. When you start to hear Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago, talking about pledging allegiance to the New World Order, like literally those words come out of her mouth. This is an agenda. So you have to ask yourself, like, okay, what's the plan? So we get into it. You know, we lay it out as clearly as we can, and we footnote it as much as we can. So if you're saying this sounds all really fishy and this sounds like a bunch of tinfoil hat talk, guys, I can say, okay, I get it. A lot of it does sound crazy, and a lot of it does sound like tinfoil hat. Don't take my word for it. Here's the footnote. Go there and look it up. Go to this other place and look it up. Don't fact check us. We insist that you fact check us on this, because we can't write a book and make these many claims without backing this shit up, or else we're going to take a whole lot of heat from a lot of people. So I encourage people to buy it, look at, read the information, go through it, check the sources, and see if it doesn't paint the picture that we're trying to paint, which is we're at a crossroads here with humanity. Doesn't have to be a bad one. There's a lot of things that need to change. I'm not saying that tearing down the American empire is going to be all bad. It's going to be, for some people, it's going to really hurt them. There's no getting around that. And I take zero pleasure in that. But I got to call it like I see it. And unfortunately, where we've allowed these people, we've allowed these globalists, we've allowed these politicians and large business leaders to take us down this path with almost no resistance here in the United States. And then we act surprised when their version of the future doesn't align with us. Well, of course not. I mean, I have nothing in common with billionaires. I don't want the same things. I'm not looking at the world the same way. But these guys are shaping reality, and it's going to be up to us to stand up and change that, or else, unfortunately, where we are at a position with Agenda 2030 on the horizon, we get into that quite deep in this book. There's going to come a time when the locks have been changed, and we're trying to stick our key in there, and we can't get in, and that's going to be we're going to say, shit, wish we had done something sooner.
So I know last time we spoke, you were still in the process of getting the final version of the cover. Is that all? Yeah,
it's up. It's all loaded on Amazon, and it's in there right now. As of this moment, we are in the middle of their 72-hour review process. So it could be up and running in 10 minutes or in 2 more days. So, but it all went up today. So I'm just
waiting. So for people listening, it's the 27th of October, and so it's hopefully sometime, maybe by the weekend, it could be out.
Yeah.
And so, which is probably, hopefully I can get the show out in the next day or two. So so hopefully by the time you listen to this, it's probably available.
And what we're doing is we're going to set up. I still have to go in and do this, so hopefully it works the way I envision this. But we're going to set up a pre-sale window for 2 weeks, and during that pre-sale window, we're taking the price. We're cutting 40% off the price from $24.99 down to $14.99, so that anybody that wants to get in early, we would appreciate that. We'll give you a big fat discount to do that. And I think that there's going to be a lot of people. Obviously, the book is going to appeal to many people, but there will be some people in this community that are listening to this, or they see the book, or they read they read it and they read the summary of it and they go, I know a lot of this stuff. Good. I'm glad you know a lot of this stuff. Then buy this book and send it to somebody else, because this is going to wake people up. There's a lot of people are going to not have this level of understanding about what's going on with this, and they're going to need it. So if you're somebody that's listening to this and you go and you check out the book, you read the summary and you go, I get it, I understand, I see where you're coming from. I don't need this because I feel the same way. I get it. You're preaching to the choir. I know from experience, there are people in my life that don't understand what I'm talking about. If you want to buy that book and, buy this book, send it to them. That's a good way. People have done that with my Octopus book as well. They've said, I've gone down that path with friends or family, and I can't talk to them about this stuff anymore. So I bought your book and I sent it to them, and I just let them deal with you, so to speak. That's great. I think that this is going to be as much for those people that are normies that have no idea about these sorts of topics. It'll be as relevant for them. Frankly, it'll be more important for them than for us, because we already have sort of a baseline knowledge of what's going on here with this. But I think it'll work for a variety of people. And I wish that we were putting out a book about unicorns and rainbows and donuts and sprinkles and all that stuff, because it'd be way more, it'd be so much easier to talk about those things and talk about, as opposed to a coming cataclysm, because you're like, oh God, I don't want to deal with this stuff. But it's like, well, hang on. I'd prefer to talk about baseball, I'd prefer to write a book about 3-4 defenses and football and all that stuff, but I can't right now. I have to prioritize what I think is the most important. And right now, this information I feel is so important to making people aware of what we're up against. And I just feel an obligation really to do it. And so, Jeff's we're putting this book out. Jeff doesn't need the attention. He's running his own business. He's doing well there. This isn't a money-making scheme for him. You know what I mean? This is about how can we compile this information into a logical way that flows, make a comparison to the way a building comes down, which I think visually helps people recognize, the certain steps that have to happen in order for this empire to come down. I think the book will make sense to them. And hopefully people will buy it and read it, and we'll make some changes so that we don't have to go through this every couple of years, or we don't have to worry about the direction that our world is headed, because we've gotten a hold of it. We've taken the controls away from these maniacs. It reminds me of that clip in the movie A Bug's Life, the animated movie, where the grasshoppers and the ants have this problem, and the grasshoppers are reminding each other that they can't let any of these little ants step up, because if you let one through, they all get through, and there's a million of them for every one grasshopper. And this is kind of where we are as a society. We're a bunch of ants operating as if we have no power, but we do have power. We have the power of numbers. We have the power of our attention. We have the power of our wallets, where we can spend money on things that we believe in. We can take money away and not spend it on things that we don't believe in. We really do have the power. And I think part of this book is a reminder of that collectively, together, we can change this world. We can get rid of these globalist maniacs that are running our world, and we can envision a much different future for ourselves. But we've got to get honest with ourselves about the problems that we face. And we've got to stop fighting with one another about, you're on the Biden team and you're on the Trump team and you're blah, 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 blah. Listen, man, we can fight those fights later, but we all need to team up together and recognize that we're in this. We collectively, us, the people, are all on the same side. It is us against them. Go watch some George Carlin. Go listen to some of his stuff. He'll get you pumped up and get you, reminded of that it is them. It is the oligarchs that are making policies, and they are setting things in a way that benefit them at the expense of us. And that is the way it is right now, but it is not the way it has to be. And the minute we all collectively get together and decide that it's over, it's over. But it's getting us to that point. It's acknowledging that we have a problem. It's talking it out, even though you'd rather talk about baseball. It's getting your family involved in these sorts of things and have them understand, having your kids understand what's actually happening with masks and things like that. And, don't fall into the fear just for the sake of fear. Have a healthy respect for what we're up against, which could be very dangerous. I'm not saying be oblivious to that. I'm just saying don't operate from a place of fear. Let's operate from a place of optimism. We've got a beautiful planet. We've got some really smart people living on it that are, and the vast overwhelming majority of us are good people that want great things for ourselves, our kids, our environment, and all that stuff. But we have got to stop following the worst people in the world, the worst people in government, the worst people in media, the people that show up on the scene as gods like Fauci and Gates. And we've got to start asking some seriously hard questions about these people and not just accepting this. So when you're in Wales and you see that non-essential items are being walled off from you in grocery stores, my thought is do not comply with unjust orders. Everybody needs to be disobedient, civilly disobedient, and we're going to get we'll get ourselves a lot further with that. We have to remind these people who's in charge. It's us, not them. But we've been brainwashed, we've been dumbed down, we've been through our education system, through the media, through GMOs and vaccines and fluoride and all that shit. We've been so dumbed down that we're just dependent on government for everything. And that's not the way government was designed. I mean, that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's become that way, but it's not the way it's supposed to be. And when you outsource your critical thinking to the media and to government, don't act surprised when it blows up in your face. So we've got to take, the book is very aggressive at going after the people that are responsible for this, but we also share in the responsibility of this. We collectively as the people need to understand that part of this is our fault too. We've allowed it to go the way it is. We've allowed this to take on a life of its own. We've allowed the politicians to just, do whatever they want to do with almost zero accountability from us. And those days have got to end. So we owe it to ourselves. We have a responsibility in this as well. So I'm good at complaining about the government. I do it a lot. There's lots to complain about, but I also have some pointed, complaints and criticisms about our own behavior as well. So we have to be better and take some responsibility, because if you're waiting for the government to come in and fix this problem, it ain't ever going to happen. I think that is crystal clear to anybody that's paying attention. So let's do it, people. Let's get our shit together. Let's rise up and change this. And guess what? When you change it, you're going to say, why didn't we do this sooner? Well, we didn't know. Maybe it's like we have to be fourth quarter, 2 minutes left to think, oh shit, we better get our act together if we want to win this game. So it's not over yet. Things are going to change. Some things need to change, but collectively, if we get ourselves to come together, there's nothing that we can't do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I also think that there is something about finally our backs against the wall. A lot of these issues people were ignoring for a long time, the vaccine agenda, big tech, censorship, spying on us, all this stuff. I think it's gotten so bad that I think a lot of people who were quiet for a long time and kind of ignoring these things, because for the most part, it didn't seep into your personal life nearly as much as it did now. I think now a lot of people are waking up and getting upset and finally doing something. So once this book's out, send me the link. I'll put it in the show description, and I'll make sure to tweet it out and all that stuff. Hopefully by the time this show's out, it'll be roughly around the time that the book's available. People, please go out there and support them. So purchase the book. Like Charlie said, a lot of us in the alternative media world, it's rare that we find a book that doesn't have some stuff we already know, because we've already went down so many damn rabbit holes that it's like, it's hard to have all new information. But I think books like this are crucial and important, because you can give it to somebody and it can help connect the dots for them, and it can help them put things in perspective. And same way that like the pandemic documentary, the interview with Dr. Judy Mikovich, how a lot of people who were having questions and second thoughts about what the hell was going on, that documentary, that interview was like, oh, okay, they just connected all those dots that I kind of knew existed, but I didn't really put the pieces together quite yet. And I think books like this can also do the same. I know your first book, Octopus of Global Control, a lot of people talk about that, how it's a great book to give to people because you do have quotes from real people. You can look them up. They said these things. I'm not bullshitting. You can't call me a conspiracy theorist. These are real people that really said these things. And so hopefully, having these type of resources to help kind of wake people up, or maybe people who are just already almost there and just need a little bit of shove, a little bit of a little more information, a little more knowledge to kind of get them to really open their eyes to this whole situation. Maybe this book will be that piece that they need, that little shove. So, but yeah, Charlie, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on the show, but also taking the time for writing a book, because Jesus Christ, I'm sure it is not something that you do overnight. I mean, it is time consuming. It is, I'm sure it's tiresome. A lot of alone time, I'm sure, just writing and trying to find inspiration and trying to figure out, where to go from here, and probably spending a bunch of time on something that you end up being like, you know what, this sucks. Let me throw it out, start over.
Yeah.
So I know that writing from my history of just writing poetry and songs and whatnot, it can be very time consuming. You can spend a lot of time by yourself saying, I'm going to do some work today, I'm going to get some shit done, and nothing happens. And then out of nowhere, inspiration comes and the idea comes and creativity just starts flowing.
Yeah, there's a lot that we left out too. I mean, my Octopus book initially was 780 pages, and I had to trim that down to 540 just to give you an idea of how much didn't make it in that book. And this book wound up being 398 pages, and it was easily, and there was another 200 pages that was left out, because we're trying to prioritize what is the most important and get the message across in as few words as possible. But it's an elaborate story about what's happening, and to think about the country, the empire coming down. There's so many aspects to that you have to fill in people on the backstory about, whether it's medical or media or military or whatever. You can't just assume that everybody knows it all, knows the backstory. So you have to sort of go down these paths, and even if it's when you're talking about empires, the cycle of empires, how they go through 8 stages, and how, by all accounts, the American Empire is on the 8th stage. I mean, everything points to it. So you have to go back and kind of paint the history of some of these other empires to explain how that works. So we did the best that we could, and we think that it will have an impact on a lot of people, and we think that it will hopefully it will wake people up, because that's the goal. The goal is to make people aware of the situation that we're experiencing and the situation that we're about to experience, and then give them the actionable information that they can then take in, incorporate into their lives, and make changes with, so that they either don't get hurt, or they don't get as hurt as they would have been, or they position themselves to come out of this on the other side in better shape than when they started, which is unbelievable. But, I talked to Jeff Berwick, and I said, how's 2020 for you? He says, I've made more money this year than I've ever made in my life. And it's like, okay, so some people can, it doesn't necessarily just, everybody's having a bad year doesn't necessarily mean that for everybody. So,
but that's not uncommon anyways. But a lot of times, a lot of rich people get richer when the economy
for sure
tanks, because that's when they buy. That's when the people who have money to spend can spend it on when things are cheap, when everybody else is struggling. I mean, you look how many people I know when, and I don't know shit about stock market or investing, but one thing I do know from just, I guess just from researching and whatnot, and you run into this information over and over again. But when things are cheap, or when the economy is tanking, that's not when you should sell. It's not when a lot of people panic, or like, I'm gonna lose all my money, let me sell. And then you did lose all your money, because you're fucking, you're selling the stock when it's at the cheapest, where that's when people are buying, and that's when,
that's the
yeah,
Rothschilds'
yeah,
motto was what you're buying. They're buying when there's blood in the streets, is
yeah.
what they said, which is a really very Rothschild-esque motto.
Yeah, well, are you gonna make it to the next Union of the Unwanted on
Of course,
November 2nd? Of course, awesome. Yeah,
of
I think
course.
I think you and I have made everyone, and
Mhm.
I think mostly because I send out the emails. That's why I've been there. But
Yeah,
but hopefully Mike will be there, and hopefully Sam will be there, and hopefully we have a great turnout. I last week on Friday I already kind of started spreading the word just in case anybody thought it was this Monday. I was just kind of giving some of the regulars the heads up, like, hey, just letting you know it's not going to be this Monday. It's going to be the following Monday. And I think now till then, I mean, it already seems like shit's hitting the fan, and a lot of stuff is happening quickly. I think now till the day before the election, there's going to be plenty of shit to talk about. So
oh,
I'm
yeah.
looking forward to hanging out with the gang again. It's cool because it does feel like I'm hanging out with the gang. Like, it's just, I look forward to seeing all you guys and
Me
being
too.
able to hang out for a couple hours. And I know even a lot of people who've been on this show, they really appreciate just like hanging out and having the opportunity and being able to share ideas and whatnot. And I mean, it seems like the listeners are really enjoying it as much as we're enjoying doing it. But
Yeah,
I mean, the listeners, if you're having fun listening to it, it's really a blast being a part of them. And just not knowing who the hell is going to show up and when they're going to show. Did I lose you? Did you freeze? Of course, right at the end of the show, you freeze. I'll wait a second and see if you come back. If not, then I'll just do an outro. That was Charlie Robinson. Oh, there you go. But yeah, but I guess that's our cue before
yeah,
would you
lovely.
every but your power, everything's been good since the last
Of
time.
course. Yeah, of course.
I know with
Yeah,
the
since
snow
we
and
got
stuff.
off, then my power, I don't have any sort of power outages. It just went off that one time right in the middle of our call.
Well, well, at least you didn't have to go any significant amount of time without power. You don't realize how much it's necessary, especially when you have kids, until you don't
Yeah,
have it. But
for sure.
but thanks, Charlie. Well, I'll
Thanks
talk if I
for
don't.
having me.
Hey, thanks for bullshitting with me for so long, and I'll put this all together, put all our two conversations together, and just do one long ass podcast. People like the long ones, and I've been doing a lot of them, so it's fun. And I'll if I don't talk to you prior, then I'll definitely see you Monday or
Yes.
Monday at 7 p.m. and we'll chat then, I'm sure.
Sounds good.
Hey,
Thanks
thanks,
for
Charlie.
having me.
Take care.
Okay, you too.
See ya.